calling this meeting to order. So I will I move that we call this meeting to order. I hate this.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Carol?
Aye.
Aye. Courtney?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And Cindy is here somewhere. There she is.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, the motion passes. All right, so the meeting is open. Is there anything that needs to be added to the agenda that could not have been anticipated 48 hours in advance? Okay, wonderful. All right, so we can go forward. Does anybody have any poetry reading or anything like that? I have something, but if anybody has anything, by all means. No? Okay. All right. Let me read this then. All right. This is a poem that I actually remembered recently, and I actually don't have the person's name, but I'll read it anyway because I think it's apropos. All right. Sometimes at night I slip outside when under the high moon the trees are writing their indelible words across the snow. The front door, at times swollen and recalcitrant, only gives way with an insistent shove. And when it does, sometimes I hear the deer break and run, but not tonight. Tonight, as the door comes free with a shudder, I hear the quick scramble of small feet and then nothing. Because there, just beyond the hedge, I see the slender legs of a fox. I wish I could tell you that I maneuvered to be able to see the face attached to those inky legs, rimmed in light, but as soon as I realized who it was, I pulled back inside. It was an impulse, really, and I'm not sure the right one. But as my heart raced, in that moment, I didn't want her to go. So, quiet as I could, I pulled the reluctant door closed. I turned the lock. I put out the lights. But I did not again look outside. Instead, I hoped that come the morning, she had done whatever it was she had started, that she had danced the whole night across this glittering world.
Neil, that is really lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we have 9 minutes. So are there things that we can take up to fill the space in between this and 7:30 for the Silverwood issue?
I have something, but Anna, do you want to start?
I would love if you went with your thing at the moment.
Did you
Jean?
say hold on?
No, she said, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, okay. Okay, so I asked it to be put on the agenda that we're planning to make revisions to the local regs. We're not going to talk about them specifically this evening because, of course, you can't do that unless it's a posted hearing. But, sorry. I've been really scrutinizing the regs lately because as I've been helping Anna learn the ropes, I wanted to be sure that when I quoted the regs to her, I wasn't getting it wrong. So over the course of doing that, I've noticed many places where there are flaws, there are omissions, and things need to be built on. And I've been making a list of those things. I'm going to send that list to everybody by Monday. It's about a page and a half. And I'm doing that early because if anybody else wants to add something to the list, there's time for that. The legal notice, which advertises a hearing to revise the regs, has to go out 2 weeks prior to the meeting. And it has to be very specific. The legal notice has to say, you know, this hearing is to blah, 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 the Sherborn regulations, and these are the sections that are under consideration for revision. So you have to be prepared 2 weeks before the actual hearing to put the legal notice in the paper that cites the sections that you want to work on. And then also once it goes in the paper, the text that you're going to be suggesting, the revisions, have to be made available to the public. So there's a lot of work to do before we can actually have the hearing. But The regs need a lot of work, so I would encourage you to look at the list I send, which will either be over the weekend or by Monday. And, you know, if there's something that you know needs fixing that's not on the list, please let me know about it. We'll add it to the list. Elizabeth put out a doodle poll with 3 dates on it for a special meeting to revise the regs. And I have a preference. The dates are for the poll are March 10th, March 31st, and April 14th. And my preference is March 31st. Those are all Thursdays. So please take a look at the doodle and let us know which meetings you can make it to. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Jean.
Yep.
All right. Do we have a warrant?
There is. It's for the wetland boundary markers. It says J&J, but they do business as all type digital graphics. So that's for, that's the bulk of it. And then there are 2 other much smaller things on that same warrant.
Okay. All right. What else do we, let's see, we got 5 minutes. So what else can we cover? I see, do we have minutes? I saw that Michael had sent something around earlier. I don't know if that gives us enough time, but if what are we doing on the tree removal and mitigation policy tonight?
Well, I sent out 2 samples of text. One was drafted by Carol, one by me. And I got some feedback from Michael. I told Michael if he wanted to take this project and run with it, I would be very happy. So I don't know if he's here. It looks like he's muted. But that we could potentially talk about that the same night as the regs hearing, although it doesn't require a hearing. So what I would prefer is that we chipped away at it, maybe tonight a little bit, and we'll see how far we get.
Okay.
I could talk about the DEP training opportunities. The circuit rider has urged us more than once to, if we wanted her to provide us with any sort of training, she's prepared to do remote workshops on a lot of different topics. So I sent an email to people and said, you know, think of what topics you're interested in. So does anybody have any ideas or suggestions? Because I do.
One of the trainings that she just mentioned to me today, which I think would be very useful, is about riverfront areas.
Yes, that's on my list too. The top of my list, though, was improving our understanding of how to conduct enforcement.
Those are both good topics.
Well, I was telling Anna today that in all my years as the agent, I think I had to deal with 2 projects that were in riverfront area, and they just were very uncommon. But, you know, it could be that we're going to be seeing more of them. I don't know. But it's embarrassing for me because I don't understand the riverfront regulations very well. And they're very hard to read too. So I would like guidance on that.
So think, in my mind, the things, just procedural things like amending orders of conditions and, you know, after the fact NOIs, like I feel like we deal with so many different wrinkles to what is the sort of standard process that, I mean, I know it's kind of broad, but like if there was just, I haven't spent the time to kind of put together a list of the kinds of things that I still feel like I get tripped up over, but maybe just sort of having like almost like a potpourri of kind of regulatory procedural stuff that we encounter a lot, but isn't really straightforward would be useful as well.
I can think of one that comes up at almost every meeting, which is what's the threshold after which you know you should go to an NOI instead of an RDA? I mean, I don't know if DEP actually can recommend a threshold, but we really need something there.
Right.
So do we want to take a straw poll? We have 3 suggestions. Enforcement, riverfront, or a potpourri of procedural stuff.
Enforcement.
Jean, We
Go
could
ahead.
also
I-
ask, excuse me. We could also ask Alicia and get for the next meeting a list of some of her most commonly asked for trainings.
We could, yeah. I think the things that we mentioned so far tonight are the ones that really trip us up the most, but
Ask her about tree cutting.
no, we're going to solve that tonight.
Okay. So are we doing a straw poll? Because I mean, if there's an overlap where it's stuff that it's in her wheelhouse and it's something we're interested in, that's probably the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I guess my preference is enforcement.
That would be my preference too.
Me too.
Who
All right.
else?
I guess I don't have a strong feeling.
I'm good with enforcement.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe we could have her a couple times, maybe once per quarter.
As time allows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we have a majority of people in favor
Yes.
of enforcement.
Yep. Okay, wonderful. It's 7:29. We might as well. So I always get this. I mean, we could ask her about this. Is this a hearing? I mean, the request to amend is a hearing, but we haven't opened the hearing yet, right?
Yes, we have.
We have, thank you. Okay, so we've opened the hearing. So we, Anna, do you want to just kind of give an update on where things stand with Silverwood?
Neil, you have to open it first.
Oh,
You have to
okay, sorry.
reopen it.
I'm reopening the hearing into the Silverwood Farm.
Actually, sorry to cut you off, but Mr. Hodson Walker specifically asked us to promise to not discuss the project in any way.
So it in
I still haven't opened it. So-
Oops.
Well, if I could get the word in, let's see. Okay, so I'm just reopening the hearing into the Silverwood Farm request to amend. Anna?
in response to what Jean just said, the hearing, it's been agreed with the applicant that it will be continued to the April 7th Conservation Commission meeting.
And I will just add that that is because we are waiting for the AECom report, and we've gotten feedback that it is most likely to be produced by the end of March. So, okay. So I move that we continue the, sorry, Mike?
Yeah, can I ask a question on this? This is Mike Flanagan. I live at 27 Doffing Brook.
Sure.
Just what is the ultimate timeline here? It seems, I mean, I know the AECom report was supposed to be completed at the end of last year, and we're a month later now. It doesn't seem like we're any closer to a resolution. It's just what's the kind of the timeline or goalpost here?
Well, basically, we've been advised by town council to wait for the AECom report to be finalized before we take any further action with regard to the Silverwood project, or the request to amend, I should say. And so that's kind of what we're constrained by. And yes, the AECom report was supposed to be produced earlier than it has been. But like I said, we've been told that it should be done by the end of March. And so once we have it in hand, we'd be able to kind of go forward. But we're sort of being advised by town council to take this tack.
These are two separate work streams, right? The order of conditions, which may or may not be enforced now, in this other procedural complaint that the AECom and everyone else, right? I mean, these are these two separate things here.
Well, I think they're slightly related. I mean, in the sense that there's been a complaint filed by Silverwood regarding the Conservation Commission's handling of the application. That is partially responsible for spurring the AECom report and some of what is supposed to be contained therein. So that's why town council has said, you know, we sort of agreed, or town council negotiated or talked with the Silverwood applicant about sort of putting off kind of any kind of timelines or deadlines until that report was in, and we could understand what our next steps were, and the town as well. So they're related to each other, although the order of conditions is its own thing.
Okay. I mean, so I understand, I mean, I guess I understand this, but I guess the only, as from a homeowner who's directly affected by this, and this seems to be going on, continually, we're the ones that lose out here while this continues to get pushed down the road. And I understand there's a fight around where the water's coming from or starting. But then you have me, the Mitchells, the Levines right in the middle here, who are looking ahead to this spring, summer season and all the water that's about to come down the back of our lots and impact our property values. And my basement and garage was flooded last year. I had mold up the walls. The Mitchell's basement and garage was flooded and had mold. Their septic system is at risk, and there's impacting erosion and land. So it's just frustrating, because I understand why Silverwood wants to kick the can down the road and why the town wants to kick the can down the road. But in the meantime, you have 3 average Joe homeowners that are just, losing out here and getting their property values impacted and deteriorate.
And
So, yeah.
This is Rob Levine, 30 Doppingbrook Road. And just piling on what Mike just said, I'm the lowest point here, who is very concerned about what is coming downstream. And if you want to come down tomorrow after we get another inch or half of rain, you're more than happy to see what it's doing. And I have no idea what's coming downhill and now settling on our property that has never done that in 50 years.
So,
this is completely new.
Right. So let me,
like Mike said, this has already been going on since 2019.
So let me,
which I know you know. Sorry.
No. Look, we are not unsympathetic to your situation. So let me just say this. First is this this particular hearing is about a very specific request by the Silverwood applicant to amend the order of conditions. So the concerns that you have are not specifically on our agenda. What I would suggest is that if the Conservation Commission to some degree is also caught in the middle, because some of this is jurisdictional, some of it is not. And so, for example, where it has impacted the wetlands on resource areas on the Dodd property, that matters. But what I would say to you is that if it's concerns that you'd like to bring to the town's attention, it should probably be brought to the town's attention. If there are jurisdictional impacts that you want to discuss with us, we're happy to put you on our agenda in the future. And all I would tell you is I understand we have also been, engaged with the activity and the results of it for a number of years as well. But I think we have to address it in a way that is procedurally correct, so that we are not getting ourselves into trouble or putting you in a bad position and so on. Does that make sense?
No, that makes, I understand. I mean, I'm by no means a lawyer, but I mean, the Conservation Commission is not enforcing the order of conditions that was put in place. So isn't that's directly on this committee's plate, no?
Well, yes. So what I would say is, if you would like to get this on our agenda, by all means, reach out to the office and we'll put it on the agenda. But this particular hearing is about a request to amend from the Silverwood applicant, and we're trying to continue it. And I'm not trying to prevent you from voicing your concerns, but I've got to do it procedurally correctly. So you're going to have to get on our agenda. You can come back and talk to us about it. We're happy to do that, because you're right, there are elements of it that relate to us, and we're happy to address them.
So I email you to get on the agenda, and how do I notify the town to make this? My recommendation to you would be to
reach out to our office, either Anna or Elizabeth. You can certainly CC me as well as the chair. And then if you want to raise it to the town's level, you would get on the select board agenda and speak to them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Michael, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up the issue of whether we need town council's advice or whether we already have it about if there are concerns about the enforcement of the current order of conditions.
Again, this is not what's on the agenda tonight, so it's the
I'm
same.
just asking whether that's something we need to,
Right, and then what
whether we can do that.
right, and what I'm saying is let's discuss it, but we can't discuss it right now. I feel like I, probably let folks go too far, not because, but because I don't want to.
I see the bind we're in, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I think it's a good question to ask, but it's not a question that's on our agenda. I have the same question in my mind that you have, Michael, and I think that a lot of people have. So, Mr. Murchison.
Yes, hi, Neil. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I just have a quick question. I saw that the administrative approvals for my properties are on your agenda tonight.
Yes.
And I just wanted to understand, does that mean they're going to be a topic of discussion later? The reason I ask is because I'm getting together with my kids tonight, so I can't stay on very, very long. So if it's possible, you could take it out of order if there's going to be a discussion, which I didn't realize that there was a discussion after an administrative approval has been granted.
So let me do this. Let me continue this hearing into the Silverwood request to amend.
Apologies.
And then it looks like Anna is ready to answer your question, but let me do this first. So I move that we continue this request to amend hearing to April 7th at what time?
7:30.
7:30.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion on that? All right, all those in favor, Neil, aye. Carol?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Anna, did you want to answer Mr. Murchison's question?
Yeah, I think I could just jump to that point on the agenda, and I will say what I was planning to say, which is that since our last meeting, I've approved 4 administrative approvals. All of the following properties, the activity proposed in the administrative approval forms for all of the following properties is outside of the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction. That includes 36 Farm Road, that was soil testing. That was an administrative approval for soil testing. 69F Lake Street, construction of a single family home. 65 Farm Road, Lot 4, construction of a single family home. And 55/65 Farm Road, Lot 3, construction of a single family home. That's it.
That's it.
Great. So there's no further discussion on it, and I'm good to leave.
Yeah, with administrative approvals, we just read off the determination that's outside jurisdiction and we go on.
Perfect. I just saw it on the agenda. I want to make sure because I'd like to be there when you guys talk about obviously.
Certainly.
So thanks a lot. Good night, guys.
Good night. All right, what is next? We have a little bit of time before our 53 Elliott Street NOI. So what time is it? 7:42. All right, minutes. Should we do that?
Sure.
I want to comment that I did make some edits to the current set of minutes in the portal, which actually made it very easy to do it with track changes. So maybe we should just look at it if Michael or somebody wants to show it.
Oh. You didn't put the. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah,
Can you
sure.
see it? You should be able to. Let me see.
Yeah, no,
Michael, if you don't want to, I can just say the word.
I guess you could take over doing that.
Okay.
think I just made edits to the one on the 20th. I wasn't at the meeting on the 10th, on the 13th of October.
I've been muted for a while. Can people see it okay?
Yes. I'm ready to scroll. Okay, stop.
Okay to continue?
Yep, it is for me. For the unauthorized construction of the rail trail, let's see, does it say? Yes, never mind. It does say we expect a notice of intent to be filed in 3 weeks, which has come and gone. You can scroll. I'm ready to scroll.
There were a number of questions in the middle of the minutes.
Okay,
Of
well,
no doubt.
the SFTA member's name is Rafe Lehman, Leeman. His first name is Rafe. Last name is Leeman. Yeah, and that statement is needs to be fixed. We asked him about how many trails, what percentage of trails that Forest and Trails works on is on conservation land as opposed to town forest. And he said he thought it was about half the work was on conservation land.
We can fix this not during screen sharing.
Okay. And scroll in. What about the questions under forms and fees? I don't know what it's supposed to say.
There's some term title for this sort of
Yeah, it's called,
GIS system.
it's called People's GIS.
Right.
Okay, sounds good. Whoever made those corrections, I approve them in the paragraph on 68 Maple.
It's really not about 68. It's about another site.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Okay, I have a question about that, Jean and Michael. Should we be saying what property that was? Because I do remember that we were talking about a specific property with there, weren't we?
Yeah.
Yes,
and
but I
don't
didn't mention
remember
the
if-
name.
It would be up to Anna to fill that in.
I didn't mention the name of it because I hadn't informed the homeowner
Oh,
that
I
it was
see.
going to be on the agenda.
Okay,
So it was just a generic question.
I understand. Thank you.
Looks good. I move to approve the minutes of, what was it, January something?
20th.
20th.
2022, with the edits discussed this evening.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, Carol,
I,
Neil, I, Jean,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Cindy,
Abstain, I was not present at that meeting.
Michael.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Though if I
Alright.
could insert, I did watch the last two meetings to catch up. I watched the recordings just for the record.
Thank you.
Should
All right,
we go on to the October 13th minutes?
absolutely.
Okay. Very short.
I move to approve the minutes of October, what?
13th.
13th, 2021.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor, Carol,
I,
Neil, I, Jean,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye. I muted myself instead of unmuted.
Cindy,
Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Neil, I wasn't at that meeting, so I'm going to change my vote to abstain because I wasn't there.
Okay, thank you. You can vote even if you weren't there, but that's okay. No worries either.
Okay.
All right. We've got 9 minutes.
Seems like annual report could be a good one for this window.
Okay, that sounds good.
Somebody gonna pull it up?
Sure, I can pull it up if you want.
I've got the box open. I can do it.
Sure.
This is, this annual report is largely a lot of cut and pasting from the prior year because it slipped everybody's attention that we needed to write it and we're actually late submitting it. So I thought that was the best solution. Anything that was from 2020 that was applicable in 2021 is repeated here.
Jean, quick question. But are the numbers updated?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, the numbers are from 2021.
okay. And also, I've already read this. I liked it, the whole annual report, and I also liked Michael's additions.
I guess the way it got saved online, you can't see what the track edits didn't show up somehow.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any.
Yeah, it was only in the, I guess I could share the screen with a few edits. There are very few, it's just in the
Are they
first.
substantive, Michael?
No. Yeah, I just thought there was some things missing. I mean, just,
And so they're accepted here, or they appear to be accepted here
yes, they
in the
appear
version that we're
here.
looking at. This is your version.
Yeah, no, it's just that most people, if you read the other one, you'd like to see what changes I made, but you can't see them here. One was in the first paragraph, in the second sentence, where it says under these powers. To be exhaustive, I added in regulates activity in and near wetlands.
Can I make a suggestion in the next paragraph? Because it's not grammatically correct. It needs kind of a subject to that verb that similar to the following paragraph where it says, and second, the commission manages, that we say first, the commission protects. Because even though it starts with a colon, it's not really written like a list. If it were a list, you could, get away with that. But as
Perfectly fine.
the grammarian in me says it has to be fixed. Where did it go?
Oh, look at that. We can see Michael's changes now.
You can.
Cool. Yeah. And I can also put this one right in finally.
Well, because track changes came back. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just how you view the track changes.
You're missing, you need to put another S in commission.
Can I scroll more? Do people want me to wait?
I think you should scroll more.
You can.
Scroll some more,
Probably
please.
say 0 amendments.
Yeah.
This, of course, is in the Dropbox too, so people can look at it slower if they wish.
Yeah, I think it might be a little too long for us to review right now live, but it looks, what I'm seeing looks very well written. So kudos to whoever.
It was written by me and Kelly a year and a half ago. And it was accepted back then, so I move to approve.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Carol?
Aye.
Neil, I. Jean?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, we still have 3 minutes. Let's do tree removal. Just kidding. I think that's going to take slightly more than 3 minutes. Is there anything in here that we can do quickly?
Yeah. So 216 Farm Road in the agent site issues and questions. That was an emergency certification that I did back on January 11th. I didn't realize that I needed to tell you about it because it wasn't something that you needed to vote on. Emergency certifications are just sort of complicated, but I issued it, but I need you to ratify it. It was for taking down 2 trees that were dangerous to the house. And it was also for pruning the top of a 3rd one. This was all within the buffer zone. And I did it, I issued it. The work has been completed, and this is just a procedural thing for you to say, yes, it was okay that you did this. And then the signature sheet is in the box.
I think it's even simpler than that. I think since you issued it, ratifying it really means pointing it out that it's in the box and people need to sign it.
Okay, so we don't need to move to vote on it.
No,
Okay, fantastic. What are we going to do with our other 2 minutes?
another poem.
Go for it. Somebody's got a nice painting. It looks Dutch. And they're little.
So with the next steps for Alicia and that we've decided we want an enforcement training, is that for us to reach out to Alicia and say, okay, let's get an enforcement training on the books, and then, and not on the books, but ask her how long, like, do we need to be more detailed about what we mean by enforcement?
Well, I thought that what we agreed to was we were going to ask her for her list of what workshops she's already got in hand. And if enforcement isn't on that list, we could bring the list back to the commission.
Sounds good.
But if it is on that list, then yes, we would ask her. And when the time comes, if you want me to help you flesh out the what it is we're looking for, I will.
Okay. All right, it's 8 o'clock. So this is 53 Elliott Street, NOI. I'm sorry, I'm not all that versed on this. I don't remember if we opened this yet.
No, and Mr. McIntyre is here for when it has
Sure.
been opened, and he can take the reins.
Great. Did somebody throw a thing that I could read in there or no? I don't see it.
I don't think I
Elizabeth?
did.
The legal notice?
Yes.
The applicant can waive the reading, if I recall.
Are you suggesting that Dan waive the reading?
He's not the
Yes,
applicant.
or we can say what we know it is, we now authorized, you can do a paraphrasing.
All right, that's what I will do. Okay. Okay, I'm opening this hearing into 53 Elliott Street, notice of intent for a septic installation. The only parts that I remember are for those wanting to be heard, fire away. So that's it. All right, so welcome, Dan.
Good evening. Can I share my screen or?
Please.
Alrighty. So for the record, my name is Dan McIntyre, representing the homeowners at 53 Elliott Street. We filed this notice of intent for the replacement of a cesspool. The owners aren't selling their homes, but they're finally starting to get nervous about their old cesspool, and they would like to upgrade it to a Title V septic system. So to orient it to the property, we've got Elliott Street down along the bottom of the page, right at the intersection of Lake Street over to the left. There are wetlands throughout the back of the property, and we had these delineated by Goddard Consulting. And they were recently reviewed by the agent and Joyce Hastings. They did have one recommendation to adjust flag number 2 over here and move that into the slope a little bit further. We reviewed that and we agree that that's a reasonable change, so we've done that. With respect to the work, the main work is to replace the septic system. The existing cesspool is right in this area here where the little hand is. The plumbing comes out of the house right on the side here over to the cesspool. And that's pretty much comprises their septic system. Their well is back here. It's within about 70 feet of the cesspool, which is less than the 100 feet required by Title V. We're proposing to move the septic system up in front of the house, which gets it out of the 100-foot buffer zone for the leach field anyways. And it also allows them to remove, this is pavement in here now. It's kind of a big expanse of pavement for the driveway. It was a circular driveway at one point with another gate over here, which isn't used because it's just kind of a dangerous to pull out of there at that intersection. So the homeowners would like to remove that pavement, replace that with lawn here over the septic system, and then turn this into a more conventional driveway with a little turnout for their cars to back into and get out. Within the buffer zone, we are installing a septic tank and a pump chamber because of the topography. We need to put them in here in order to connect to the existing plumbing. We couldn't find any way to redo the plumbing in the house to come out somewhere else. So this is really the most challenging part of the project, is to get those tanks in. We're proposing to use the compost filter socks through here. Those are the heavy erosion controls, and we'll have those staked to ensure that we keep all our stockpiles and sediment in this area. Based on the site walk, we did adjust the plan today to indicate that there's a small brick walkway that takes it from the driveway down to the back patio. That's going to be disturbed during construction and will be replaced essentially in kind when the site is restored, with a couple of minor adjustments to get around the covers of the tank. And also there's a small drain right here where, just because of lousy construction of the walkway, I think they have icing here, so they put a little drain in there. But the final construction is noted to build this up so it sheets off into the ground cover over here. The other thing we noted was we put a note up here. There's a tarp on this top of the slope right here. The homeowner indicated that was to prevent weeds from coming up, but it's really not a weed block. It was a real plastic tarp. So we're proposing to remove that and restore this area in here that gets disturbed with ground cover and mulch. The second item that's kind of ancillary to the septic system is an old well over here. This well failed on them a few years back, and it has to be decommissioned properly. So a welder will be coming in here to fill that with concrete and decommission it. And that is also outside the buffer zone. There's no tree removal proposed other than an ornamental tree in this area here that'll be coming down as part of the septic system construction. And I think that's really it. I can turn it over for questions at this point.
Dan, for the driveway, which is being replaced there, what surface are they contemplating? Were they thinking perhaps of using something like gravel to make it more pervious?
No, we're proposing to use asphalt paving in here. It's currently all asphalt here and asphalt across the front. So there's a net reduction when we're done. We are adding this turnout here, which will sheet off into this area here. But we are proposing asphalt, yes.
It looks like there's actually an addition though within the jurisdictional area, right? A small addition.
Within the jurisdictional area, it's an increase in paving. On the overall site, it's a decrease.
Dan, with the owner, where Carol had just pointed out that there is an increase in the jurisdictional area, would the owner consider doing just that area, not the whole driveway, but just that one little leg with something more pervious? since it's
Well-
since it's in the, jurisdictional area?
Well, I think the concern with that is when we go to a gravel or a crushed stone type pavement or surface,
Mhm,
the winters are just brutal, and that the snow plowing just creates a mess around the edges here.
mhm, mhm,
Whereas if we did the asphalt paving, it would just sheet into this area here, which is
mhm,
fairly, well, very good ground cover actually, and could just
mhm.
sheet down into the wetland.
Is, so my concern with that, I understand what you're saying about sheeting down into that area, and, that's all good. My concern with that is the automobile fluids, oils, that kind of thing, that will be sheeting off with it and then into to the wetland.
Well, I think that's gonna happen anyway, even if we did this area as something other than asphalt. That's really not where the cars are parking. The cars are gonna really be parking in the garage.
Yeah.
And if they're parked anywhere, they're gonna be kind of right here where we parked during our site walk. This
Yeah.
is really just for a turnaround. The cars are gonna be there for a minute while they get out.
Okay. Is there anything that you can do as an engineer to capture oils or automobile fluids, liquids, that kind of thing in that area? Or I'm not well
It's-
versed in the capture methods, but
It's difficult to do that and do a good job at it.
mhm,
And it's probably not economical for a single family house to do that.
okay.
One option might be to kind of dig an infiltration trench around here and put some pea stone in it, but then those oil and greases are going right into the ground.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that's any improvement or
Any
not.
better? Mhm. And just one other thing that I don't know if this is just more of a discussion topic, Neil, or because this isn't a specific topic for Dan, but I remember going to this property. I think it was prior to COVID. I don't know if anyone else remembers going to the property. Between 10 and 12 trees got cut down just without being permitted. Does anyone remember this?
Yes, I do.
And
Yeah,
I just didn't know where we stood with that, because typically I think that might be an EO, but I don't know if it was. I think Anna looked something up, but I didn't get a chance to get back in and look and see. Is it, Anna, did you put it in the Dropbox?
I did put it in the Dropbox. So it was not an enforcement order. It was a letter to the homeowner informing them of that the Conservation Commission was aware of unauthorized tree cutting within jurisdiction. He was then invited to a meeting in January of 2021, and did come, and the minutes of that meeting are also in the folder. And what came out of that meeting was a recommendation that the agent send a letter explaining the process for tree cutting within jurisdictional area. However, Joyce says that that letter did not go out, or she is not aware of that letter ever having gone out. So that's where it is, as far as I could piece together from the documents that I found.
Okay, thank you.
My memory of how we wound the conversation up with Mr. Kamenetsky was, we had decided there was, we didn't ask him to do any remediation. We talked about it, but I guess this is how I remember it. I think the commission felt that he was, completely unaware, and he was afraid for the trees hitting the house. And, in the discussion, he said, okay, now I know that I shouldn't have done it. And I won't do it again. But we didn't require anything, any other action from him. That's my memory.
Yeah, I remember there not being any follow-up either. Courtney, you were going to say something?
Yeah, well, I think actually a lot of the trees, or a very significant portion, were not in jurisdiction once we looked at it. And then I think kind of our reasoning on this was, they were, if he had put these in as like a dangerous tree removal, and this comes back to that tree policy, is that, what he had done, we wouldn't have asked for him to do anything in return. You know what I'm saying? They were dangerous trees, and if he had done the proper thing, we would have just said, okay, they're coming down. And at that time, we weren't even thinking about, putting in replacement trees. So I think that's how we ended up at that.
Yeah, and he wasn't planning on using the area for, formal landscaping.
No, it wasn't like cleared with a purpose of doing something. It was to take down trees that were threatening the house.
Okay. So, I mean, I think in the context, especially of this application, I think that unless people still, yeah, Michael?
Oh, you can finish your sentence.
No, go ahead.
No, I think that from what I saw of the record, I don't think there's any implications for this NOI from that, is the bottom line. And then moving back to the NOI, I guess one thing is, I don't know how finely you can do the paving of that little extension there, that whether, rather than have it sheet off towards the wetlands directly, that it sheets off towards the street, towards Route 16 there, so that it's less likely to cause erosive problems with any kind of runoff. Is that something that you can actually, that level of
well, we can't get it
fineness?
to go, we can't get it to go back to Elliott Street. Excuse me.
I'm not talking about the whole driveway. I'm just talking about that little tongue that sticks
Yeah,
off.
that's below the elevation of Elliott Street. Elliott Street's up at elevation 176.
I don't want, I
175.
just mean that it would be tilted so that the water would run off on that on the side towards Elliott Street versus off the back of the
That
street.
is so steep. I feel like no matter what he does, it's just gonna go downhill.
Well, I think it's the extent that it could be more directed to the side than the back. To the extent that you can even do that kind of fine tuning, I'm not sure that's possible.
Well, I'm concerned that we don't start to create a, kind of a point source or concentrated drainage.
Okay,
Right now,
so
we've got this contour here kind of coming across this way, and this contour here. So the water is kind of sheeting in this direction. If we tip this turnout toward Elliott Street, it's going to come in here and then kind of force its way through here, and I think it'll become more of a concentrated flow.
Okay,
I'd be wary of doing that.
fine. Moving on, for commission discussion, what sort of, in the area where there's going to be a ground cover, which is sort of around the erosion control around the walkway down there, what do we want to specify in the order of conditions in terms of what we want to see there, or that's something we want to put in terms of a specific condition? We would have a landscaping plan to be agreed upon with the agent and the commission later.
I would defer on the plant choice to Jean or Carol, because
Well,
they really know their natives and plants and ground covers.
Yeah, I think the one thing I was thinking is often when there's ground cover that's established, it's something like Pechysandra, which does like to get into wetlands, and it's not native. So, but there are plenty of other herbaceous plants that could take hold. Even it looks pretty steep, but maybe some ferns or
question is, are we going to decide that tonight? Since we're probably going to close the hearing tonight, or whether we're going to write a general condition?
I'd be in favor of specifying right now that it should be natives and it should be, signed off on or approved by the commission, by the agent or the commission's representatives later.
I think that's what we want, but it's still open-ended enough to give flexibility.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I
given
think that
yes.
works.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear that we want to have that as a condition.
Yeah, that's good.
And then we could see better what it looks like
Mhm.
springtime or after it's all completed.
Right.
We can,
Sorry, Michael, can finish.
no, I was just trying to think of conditions.
That sounds reasonable to me.
Okay. Dan, can I just ask a quick question about where the walkway is, where you're going to put the tank in? Is there any, I know it's a walkway now, is there any sort of actual sort of vegetation removal that's of a, kind of more of in a natural state or anything like that there? Or is it all within previously disturbed area?
It's all previously disturbed. The bulk of this area here has got bark mulch on it with a few ornamental bushes and things he's planted in here. And I think he wants to put those back. So the area we're talking about is kind of the top of the slope. And in this area here where the trucks will be accessing down to get to the tanks, will get pretty messed up.
Okay.
And are you familiar with New England Wetland Plants, the company New England Wetland Plants?
Yeah, we specify them quite frequently.
Because they have a catalog online and there are dozens of native ground covers listed in the catalog.
I can review those with the homeowner and we could propose something to the commission when springtime gets here and we're ready to do this.
Okay, thanks.
So what other special conditions do we want to have for this thing? Seems pretty simple.
Don't we usually, isn't it usually like boilerplate that the stockpile happens outside of, or like on the driveway or something, but it doesn't look like that's happening here. Isn't that usually a boilerplate?
I don't think that may not even be possible on this site.
It really isn't. We did show a temporary stockpile here. We are putting in the tanks right here, so there's going to be an excavation. We're going to temporarily put the spoils here to allow room for the tank truck to come in here and set these. And then the contractor will use the bulk of that to backfill around those tanks and then remove the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So with respect to temporary stockpiles, this is probably the most temporary because the tanks are going to go in one day and get backfilled in one day.
So the stockpile would only be there for 24 hours?
Probably 48.
In previous orders of condition, we have noted about not doing certain activities in rain or heavy downpours or whatever, however we've worded it.
Yeah, that's kind of a standard condition.
Okay, so it's probably already in there is what you're saying?
It should be, yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's generally those conditions that apply to when we're trying to not avoid compaction and whatever else. This area is going to be. So I'm not sure that we always have it, and I'm not sure how applicable it is in this particular project, given that the work area where the soil stored, where they're going to store stuff, is all going to be so heavily impacted that I'm not sure that we would. I don't think we can condition when they're putting in the tanks and everything else and doing the whole field that we need to condition that.
Well, I would disagree, Michael, because of the slope of the site. I think, even though there's erosion control in place, if you've got loose soil on site because they've had to abandon the work for the night, and there's a heavy downpour, you can overcome the erosion control.
Yeah, I guess we used to have things where any storage thing has to be tarped. Any storage, maybe more importantly, that we have to, yeah, that's if, I mean, right, but that's, right, it could happen overnight, but that's always a problem.
Well, Dan, if it's possible that the stockpile will be there for 48 hours or potentially even longer, is there some way to contain it for this, you know, some temporary containment while it's there?
Well, the containment really is the perimeter erosion controls here. I think it would be small enough to cover with a tarp. That might minimize any erosion of the stockpile and sediment washout.
I think that's a good idea. I remember I saw some MACC, one of their seminars that recommended that, and it just protects it so it doesn't do that washout in a heavy rain.
And I think the contractor would prefer that rather than trying to set up another ring of hay bales around the stockpile, because it's a pretty congested area right in here.
Do we have any other special conditions that we're concerned about, other than I bring up the one that we always have so much fun with, whether we want to put in a few markers?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Michael.
I was waiting for you to do it.
I think Cindy has marker fatigue.
So you know when you get to the markers, Dan, that you're home free.
I was holding back until, so I could see we could put a few along the, I could just see, and they could be fairly low, I think, on something that, given that site, having posts doesn't apply, that I could think something on the ground, in that new ground cover area, that part of the landscaping plan.
Yeah, that's like.
I would
kind of right
essentially say that as
there.
part of the landscaping plan, we will,
Mhm.
so we don't have to do it tonight. As part of the landscaping plan, we will include a number of markers that are appropriate for the site and the landscaping.
Well, you know what, what is it? Woodland. Do you remember Woodland? I think it might be 121, but I'm not sure if that was the number. But they have like low, it's like just a low cube, like concrete cube.
Right.
And then it
Sticks up
has the
2 feet
marker.
above the ground. It's supposed to stick up 2 feet above the ground.
Oh.
Well, we could see what's appropriate here. I was about to say, since it's 8:26, and we might want to, and we have something, a guest for 8:30, whether how much we want to fit this in versus just say that there will be, that we can call it that there'll be a landscape and monument plan.
But will we come back and talk about that, Michael?
Yes, yes.
If we could just kind of quantify that, so the homeowners can put that in the bid specifications and get pricing for it. But at 121 Woodland wasn't my job, but I did look at those, and we did some at 32 Old Orchard. We just used those 4x4 or 5x5 concrete bounds that stick up out of the ground a couple of feet. And we put those, I think you wanted to try to get it at the 50-foot buffer, but in this case, I think we're looking at probably right on the other side of the walkway in this area here. Is that?
Yeah.
And also extending up towards the driveway bump out.
Up in here.
I'd also like to see it extend out the backyard along the 50.
Over in here?
Yeah, because that's where some of the trees were cut. And it would be good to have, sort of a line working there.
Yes, it depends what, right, we'd have to see what's the existing, what's natural buffer and what's not natural buffer along there to make some sense. Because not all of that a lot of that 50-foot buffer is actually lawn. It is not, it's already altered.
So in the interest of time, why don't we just say that we would want maybe 3 or 4 total markers positioning to be discussed and agreed upon with the agent later. Can we do
I
that?
think I would add up, but just on the side with the septic. I could see a couple by the walkway and then a couple maybe up around the driveway.
That's
And,
4.
That's 4. And the only question is trying to accommodate Cindy's thing that maybe
Well,
there
I
are
would try to
other
get, like,
monuments
3
elsewhere in the
Yeah, I would try to
property.
get like 3 more along the left side of the, going from the left side of the house there.
Well, 7 monuments, I mean. I don't
Well,
wanna-
let me just interject this. This is a much longer line than, I think it's 15 Apple Street that we did, and they had 5 at 15 Apple Lane or 15 Apple Street or whatever. They had 5 monuments along that much shorter line than this. This is a much longer line.
I like round numbers. Can we just do 8?
Sure.
They're not that complicated to put in.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you, Dan.
I'll send you the specifications that the commission has already laid
Alrighty.
out.
Thanks.
Any other
Um,
conditions before I move to close the hearing? Do we feel, I don't know how much we feel the urgency on keeping to schedule.
I feel the urgency, so
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else.
I move that we close the hearing.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Michael,
Aye.
Neil, I, Courtney,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Jean.
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. So at this point, I'm assuming we'll draft an order of conditions and talk about it at the next meeting. Okay.
What does that mean? We can't start the Board of Health process until we get something from conservation. Ellen won't let us advertise their hearing, so.
Do we need for this one to go through that? In the past, we haven't, I mean, the question is whether this is a simple enough order of conditions that it could be done by the office. And people can review it if they want. Do we want to hold to that?
Well, we still have to formally approve the project once we have the order, correct?
That's true, unless we did that now, right?
I'm
Well,
okay
Dan-
with approving the project right now.
You
I'd
are
like
okay.
to review the order of conditions.
But you can still do that and doesn't. even if
That's
we
fine,
approve.
as long as I can review them, that's fine.
I think we.
So Cindy, are you, hold on, please. Cindy, are you saying that before you vote to approve, you would want to review the order of conditions? Or are you saying you're fine to do it after the fact?
I'm fine with reviewing the order of conditions and closing, and what did you want? Well, we just did close the hearing, so whatever.
The question
Okay.
is, we closed the hearing, but do we also want to go ahead and approve the project now before the order of conditions has been drafted? And I'd say I feel comfortable with that.
As we've discussed all of the conditions. that are
Yeah,
gonna go in
I'm
there.
fine with that as long as I can look at the order of conditions and review
Yes.
them.
Yes, we will let you do that. Absolutely. Okay. In that case, unless somebody else has something other to say, I will move that we approve this project with the conditions as discussed and the order of conditions to be drafted and reviewed and finalized outside of a hearing process.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Jean,
Aye.
Neil, I, Courtney,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
motion carries. There you go, Dan.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll be in touch. Okay. City of Framingham request for Sherborn support of MVP action grant application. Who is presenting that?
Mr. Rob MacArthur, who is here, he's the conservation administrator for the city of Framingham.
Great.
Hello all. Yeah, so Rob McCarr, the Conservation Administrator, City of Framingham. We are preparing, well, we've submitted a letter of intent for an MVP, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Action Grant to acquire a property on the south side of Framingham at 103 Guild Street and The owner of that property owns contiguous properties in Ashland and one small property in Sherborn. Let me see if I can share my screen to better show that. If I can figure this out. Anna? Let's try this one. Is that showing up?
We see a list of documents.
Oh, why didn't it go on?
Yeah, we're seeing your screen.
Yep. There we go. So this is the 103 Guild property in Framingham. These are contiguous properties owned by the same individual in Ashland, and then this is the one property in Sherborn. The Sherborn property, I think, is about 1.17 acre. What we were considering doing, so you can see that the 103 Guild property does have some upland. It has not been developed yet. People keep coming in with proposals for it, but it really has what it needs to prevent any development. Aside from if somebody wanted to build a single family house out there by right, but you know, we consider it important to protect the remaining flood storage along Beaver Dam Brook. And so we've submitting this as an MVP action grant with climate resiliency and flood storage, but there's also great opportunity for open space and recreation. This part of Framingham is very built up, even this northern part of Ashland. And so you'd have open space available here. Plus the railroad right away is scheduled to be abandoned. I don't know whether CSXs might renege on some of the yard, but it's abandoned to Whitney Street, I believe, in Ashland. And the Upper Charles Trail has come close to that through Holliston. The idea is that the Upper Charles Trail would come up into Sherborn and Framingham as well. So there's those opportunities to consider. What we were proposing was for the properties all, so they could be owned together, would be for the Sudbury Valley Trustees, which is a private land trust, nonprofit land trust that operates in the whole Suasco area. They do have a little bit of open space in Ashland. This area down here, I don't believe that they come into Sherborn or whatever, but it does give them the ability to sort of expand into a more urban and EJ neighborhood area. And then each community would hold a conservation restriction on their parcels as well. So they'd be doubly protected. So that's what we're proposing sort of in a nutshell. I can answer any other questions regarding the additional recreational stuff or specifics about the properties, just so that we don't take up too much of your time.
Who are you suggesting would hold the conservation restriction in Sherborn?
Probably your Conservation Commission, unless you have a another land trust that you might want in Sherborn to hold it. In Framingham, we've worked with SVT or Sudbury Valley Trustees previously, where they might hold a property and the Conservation Commission holds the CR on the same property, so it's doubly protected. We've done the same thing with part of our Wittenborg Woods, where DCR holds the overriding CR, but it's just a way of doubly protecting the property. But yeah, so in Sherborn, I would imagine the town would probably have it be held by your Conservation Commission. If your Conservation Commission does hold property throughout the rest of Sherborn.
But it's possible to have a private entity also do it instead.
I would think so. Yeah, I would think that the CR could be held by another land trust nonprofit, similar to SVT. I think that would be fine.
So what steps do you need from us now?
I wanted to make everyone aware, make you all aware of it. The grant will actually probably post its RFP probably in the first 2 weeks of March, and the application would be due probably sometime the very end of April or around May 1st. So wanted to make sure that there was a level of comfort on your part with proceeding on this. We do have some instances where Framingham holds some conservation land outside of the boundaries of Framingham, but I would prefer to, have each community hold their own CRs. And again, for the Upper Charles, it allows, if the abandonment of the railroad right away and the yard there takes a lot of time, it does give the ability for the Upper Charles, as it continues, to come onto what we call the Zanny properties and through the 103 Guild and out to Hollis Street. We're looking at, Framingham has the ability to be a sort of the trail hub for Metro West. So with the Upper Charles coming into the southern end of Framingham and the Bruce Freeman heading out of the north, we'd need to figure out how to get through downtown Framingham. And there's some other trails in development. And the other interesting thing is, besides the Upper Charles, is the East Coast Greenway that presently is sort of mapped through Worcester, but by mapping Worcester to a large extent, they're crossing Massachusetts on roadways, where if they chose this route with the Upper Charles to the Bruce Freeman, most of Massachusetts would be crossed by trail for this East Coast Greenway, which is East Coast. So that's another recreational component that this allows. But yeah, it being an MVP action grant, our first focus is on the flood storage capacity and just acquiring the land to protect it for those purposes. And then the fact that it's in an EJ neighborhood, recreational components for the EJ neighborhood, but as well as for Ashland stuff. There's some other trails that come in here, is bonus.
Okay. Carol, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was looking at it on the bigger map. I just wanted to understand where it is, because it looks almost like it is behind the Barber Reservation. I don't know if other people were able to.
I think your Barber Reservation is somewhere down off the tracks on this side, is it?
Yeah,
The
it's
Barber
above.
Reservation, yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Maybe
It's
Michael,
more
you
in
know.
li- It's
Let me see
more
if
in
I can-
line with that electrical, with the, where Eversource has its that yard there. And then there's also the Sherborn Fire and Rescue. If you have the Odessa parking lot, then you have the Sherborn Fire and Rescue kind of site. And then you have the Eversource thing, and this looks like it's just below that Eversource.
Sorry, yeah, I
Um,
was trying to bring up a different view.
Is that what that corridor is? That must be, it looks like
Mm-hmm.
there's this kind of green corridor cutting across.
So here's the greater context between Framingham, Ashland, and Sherborn. So I believe your Barber Reservation, along with some associated open spaces, is down in here. It says.
I'm not seeing,
what-
excuse me, I'm not seeing the map that you're referring to.
We're
right
just
now.
seeing your file explorer.
Yeah, we're just seeing your
Oh.
file list.
Let's see.
Do you have it on a separate screen?
I thought I brought it up on this. Let's see, new share.
Might be sharing the wrong screen on your computer.
Yeah, I do have the luxury of having a staff person when we do our Conservation Commission meetings do the sharing. Let's see, why didn't it come up? Well, maybe I shouldn't have. set
Someone
that.
has said it's near where the lean-to was, but I think it's not, I think this is a bit further north of that even.
I think it is too, because I'm looking, I think I'm looking at the
Yeah.
map, Robert, that you were trying to share, and there's kind of a big gap. The Barber there is kind of bisected by the train track. There you go.
Is that aside from the blue shading, but yeah, I think this is marked as municipal and this is land trust.
Yeah,
Oh,
That's
okay.
the Barber.
Mhm.
so the little triangle is us there, and
Yeah, so
So
this is
that's fine.
the one parcel that's in Sherborn. That would be some of these contiguous Zanny properties. So Mr. Zanny lives in Ashland and owns all of these properties. They total, on one count, right at 40 acres, but on another at 48. So It depends on whether we go by what's on the assessor sheets for each community or we measured it on GIS. So there's one parcel in Ashland that's bigger when you measure it by GIS.
Well, one thing I would comment is it's nice to see that there will be some direct connectivity with the Sherborn rural land, which then connects in with the Barbers. So it actually adds to the habitat connectivity there.
Yeah, and so when you were talking about who could hold the CR, if SVT owns in fee, then your land trust that owns the Barber could be that candidate.
But the Barber is owned by the town and the Conservation
okay.
Commission manages it.
Oh,
But-
okay. I was just going by what was down here on the legend.
Yeah, I was thinking about Rural Land Foundation holding the CR. We'd have to ask them.
Well, to clarify, Jean, I think on this map, it looks like the lighter green portion is Sherborn rural land. That's my understanding from what Michael said.
Yeah, I think you're right, Carol. I think you're exactly right. I think the land trust is the Sherborn Rural Land Foundation.
And then the darker green below it, Robert, is
That's Barber.
Yes, conservation land, the Barber.
Okay.
I mean, besides asking rural land, I mean, just another option is that area of Sherborn is part of, Sudbury Valley Trustees area, because it's part of the Sudbury watershed, I believe. So seems like there's options.
This makes sense it makes sense to me, this whole proposal. The question for you, Robert, is whether for the application to have the most strength, whether you need our select board to I think, whereas you might have the endorsement of our Conservation Commission, I think you probably might want to get a letter from our select board or town administrator in support of this.
That
would be the best, I think, would look the best in the application.
Yeah, that probably makes sense.
So that we can go to them and say that we think this is a good idea for habitat and trails and recreation and a number of reasons, but that you might want to go in front and get on their agenda.
Okay, yeah, I will talk to Krista Collins, who's sort of the land acquisition person for SVT, and sort of map out that strategy. Again, the actual grant proposal hasn't even been posted yet, so we just submitted a letter of intent. So, but I think that certainly makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea, and we're willing to. That may be for tonight's issue for us, is whether we as a commission want to vote to give a letter of support for their proposal, as well as to the select board here.
I'll second that.
Is that an actual motion?
I guess somehow it turned into one.
I'm like, what just happened?
Well, if it is one, it is one, and I just have one comment to make during discussion.
Yeah, well,
So was that a motion, Michael?
I was just putting it in front of all of us, whether that's what we wanted to do.
Okay, so then it was not. One thing I would just say is, I mean, I agree with you, Michael, that, I mean, generally speaking, the way, whenever there's land that would come up for acquisition for conservation, it's usually our recommendation to the select board. I mean, this is a little bit different if it's going to be done with, through the mechanisms we're talking about, but I mean, we can have a motion to, write a letter or to just express our support to the select board. What do people think?
Well, I think
support.
I think the select board has also asked us to weigh in on these sorts of things in the past, because it does involve taking something kind of off the tax rolls.
Right.
But it's not, I mean, given what this whole project as a whole gains, and this is a pretty small parcel, but they do usually ask us for,
Yeah, I mean, that's the process, right? They ask us for a recommendation and then they take it up.
Yeah.
Carol, were you going to say something?
Yeah, it seems like we're all fairly positive, so I move that we support this in a letter to the select board.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Friendly
Alright.
amendment, that's also a possible letter of support that could go in the two Framingham too, that they can include in their proposal, that it's two similar letters.
Yeah, that would be great.
Letters
So-
of support for everyone.
Right, so we'll take this up as part of the discussion. So Robert, you're suggesting that it'd be more helpful to have two letters than one?
I think, yeah, one letter that we could include with our grant application, but a letter from your commission to your select board showing a positive focus on this, then I imagine we would get a letter of support also from your select board or from your town manager.
Okay, so you'd like a letter that's directly something you can include in your grant application from us, and then we'll also send something to the select board.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that as our plan of action?
Yes.
Great,
Yeah, let's vote on it.
okay. Any other discussion?
Yes, I have a question, Robert. When is the grant application due? In other words, when do you need a letter from us?
So the RFP for the grant, I'm told should be probably issued the second week in March, with a due date for the application to be received, I think around May 1st. So yeah, I would say perhaps by the second week in April, if we could get the letters to us, that'd be great.
Okay. All right, any other discussion?
And I guess to Robert, that you'll take care of approaching our select board. We'll write the letter, but I assume you would want to figure out your schedule in terms of presenting there.
Yeah, yes, I would present or I'd have somebody else.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll leave that to you.
And the only thing I'd say is just from a sequencing perspective, you'd probably want our recommendation to our select board on, sort of off to them before you sit down with them. So if you want to let us know when you've got that scheduled, we can time at least that communication so that it precedes your attending their meeting.
Okay.
right.
Neil,
Yes.
can I amend my motion to include Michael's friendly amendment, which is that, I move that we write a letter of support to both Sherborn Select Board and to Framingham in support of this project.
Sure. Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Neil, I, Jean,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Michael?
All right,
All right, the motion carries. Okay, Robert, let us know when you're going to meet with the select board. We'll make sure to get at least that letter out beforehand.
Okay, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. 8 minutes. Okay.
Wow. Hmm.
So, Anna,
it's not the trees.
actually, we could take a break. Anna, do you want to take a break? Great.
Like
We're gonna
that.
So it sounds windy out there, as if tree removal might be happening.
All right. Let's at least take a few minutes so everybody can stretch their legs.
Great.
Okey-doke. Well, I mean, it's a big issue. What means a big issue is that she is carrying the news very late in the game. And she's only sending applications every time they She hasn't been thinking about each of the projects long enough to be able to speak about them.
I'm still here. I never went anywhere. But now I'm in the dark. The eye strain just gets to me at a certain point.
Understood.
I'm turning into a mole.
Did anyone else notice on Nextdoor that people were commenting on owls? There's been a lot of owl activity in town. Yeah, people are hearing the owls calling at night. It's really lovely.
Yeah, I mean, is that more than usual at this time of year?
People seem to be commenting on it that, well, I've always heard owls mostly in the winter. I think that must when they must start mating or something or establishing the territories.
Yeah, this is their breeding time.
People are hearing great horned owls and what else are they hearing? Did you happen to see that, Jean, online?
I don't get to Nextdoor. I don't see it anymore. But barred owls, BARRED, are very big around here.
It's just nice to know they're out there.
Oh yeah. I mean, any time of year we have them like right around the house. Sometimes they wake me up in the middle of the night with their back and forth calling and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's nice.
You've got the Bailey Trail so close by. You must hear lots of wildlife.
Absolutely. I actually had a coyote going through my backyard after about a half hour after like 5 or 6 deer went through. I actually took some photographs of him, but he was gorgeous, you know.
We were walking in your neighborhood the other day and we heard it sounded like a pack of coyotes howling to each other like at around 3 p.m.
Oh yeah, you hear it often. You know, there's a few sort of bigger expanses around us. Bailey is one, and Maple, you know, sort of between Maple and where we are is another sort of pretty big expanse back behind Wood Road and Page Farm.
Yep.
The real prize is when you get to see a red fox close up.
Oh,
they're so beautiful.
Oh, I know.
Have you seen any lately, Jean?
I see one crossing Nason Hill Road at least once a week, and it's doing a lot of crossing, and I always worry that it's going to get hit.
You know, Steve Gaskin used to have a pair of foxes that would den right on his property. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember seeing that.
Yeah.
I remember he told us about that.
Yeah, he shared great photos of them.
Yeah. All right. It is 9 o'clock. So fellow commissioners, is everybody back? I see Michael's unmuted. Carol, you're obviously there and Jean is there. Cindy, are you back? You are.
I am here. Yeah, sorry, it just took me a second with the mute.
No worries there. Jean, you disappeared. Are you coming back?
I am prepared to lead us through the 11 Goulding application, but I also see that the property owner, Mark Albers, is here.
Yep.
And so if I leave anything out, we can definitely turn to him for additional information.
Great.
That sounds fine. Thank you so much. My wife is on too as well, Alyssa Albers.
Okay, fantastic. All right, Anna, go ahead. This is an RDA for 11 Goulding Street East.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the last page of the RDA application. This project is, in some ways, it's quite simple. They are proposing to expand their deck to have a slightly different footprint and to screen it in and put a roof on it. And there's also part of the proposal is to put on an open deck, since they'll be losing their open deck on another part of the house. But what makes it complicated for the Conservation Commission, or what makes it really worthy of some thought, is that it's in two two different jurisdictional areas. One is that it's in the wetland buffer of a bordering vegetated wetland. And so that is, you see these, this BVW line and the 100-foot buffer. So the part of the new proposed deck, screen and porch is in the 100-foot wetland buffer. But it's also in a riverfront area, which is a resource area. It's not a buffer zone, it's a resource area. That's because Sewell Brook back here is, which runs along the back of the property, is a perennial stream. And so that has a 200-foot resource area that goes all the way beyond the house to the front of the property. And so the whole project is in the 200-foot resource area. And then a little tiny piece of the deck is the new proposed open deck is in the 100 inner riparian zone or riverfront area. But most of it is in the 100 to 200 outer resource area. And I've consulted with Alicia at Mass DEP, and it really is up to the Conservation Commission whether to permit this project as a negative determination and say it does not need a notice of intent, or to request that the applicant submit a notice of intent for this project, because, you know, reasons could include that there is a little bit of impervious area being added with the roof. The applicant has in the RDA has suggested that, I believe it's in the RDA, or it might have been in an email outside of it, saying that there's going to be a gravel area, and I'd be interested to hear more from Mark about this, but he suggested some sort of gutter that take any runoff and direct it to a very particular area that would promote infiltration. And so some things that I would recommend that the commission take into consideration when making your decision are, you know, the fact that it is in a resource area. That's the big thing, in addition to being in the buffer zone. And to think about the slopes, I'm going to pull up something else to show you that I put some photos from the site into the Dropbox, but I also made a little summary PDF of them that I'll pull up in a second. And then to think about the details of the proposed work, which is in the Dropbox, because it was in an email, and I also will defer to Mr. Albers if you want to explain. You know, I asked you about the equipment that would be used and the depths of the footings and those kinds of things, because that all affects whether, you know, how much erosion and disturbance is going to be happening. So just a couple of more things to share with you. this is very small, but this is another thing that came in with the RDA package, just showing this has, I guess, only the new proposed, no, it's the existing deck. This is the only.
Correct. That's the existing deck. Yeah.
But then what's special about this drawing is that it shows the drainage flow. That's the notable thing. And this is also in the Dropbox. But where did I want to go? I want to go stop share.
Anna, did you say that you had pictures in the Dropbox?
Yeah. Did I lie about that?
No,
Well, I can't find them, but maybe
they are in there.
So screen share, and actually just give me 1 second, please. Oh,
I wish that was my backyard.
Oh no, I know what happened. I had to refresh. I needed to refresh. That was because I had an earlier Dropbox.
Are you still with me? I think I was
Now we
sharing
can see the photos. Yeah.
beautiful water, but oops.
Now we see a beautiful modern art piece.
Oh dear. Okay. Now you can see the photos of the backyard. So they're not the biggest, but I'm just going to walk you through them really quickly. Can you see my mouse, my cursor?
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
So in this first picture in the upper left, you're looking from the front of the house towards the back of the yard. And this is the existing open deck. So it's not the steepest, but it's also definitely not flat ground. And so where this picture is taken on the upper left photo, there you're looking at where the new deck would be extending towards the viewer. And then there's some pictures looking down into the backyard towards Sewell Brook. Those are the other two across the top there. And then this is the back of the house where the open deck is proposed. And again, not the steepest, but also not flat. And that's sort of Mr. Albers. Is this sort of in the middle of the backyard, this last photo?
Yeah, that's like standing where the proposed open deck would be, looking to the right. So the Sewell Brook is actually to your left in that photo.
Mhm.
That would be straight back.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm not going to pull up the text document with the with the details, because that's in there, and we can ask Mr. Albers for more specifics. So I think I will stop screen sharing and turn it over, as that's all I have to say.
Well,
Yeah.
it would be good if somebody had pulled up the first plan that you showed us, unless Mr. Albers wants to do it. But
Oh, sure, I can do that.
Okay. This is Mark Albers. Thanks everybody for your time. Much appreciated. Anna, thank you for that description. I think you're accurate on everything. I'm certainly willing to take questions, but some of the things you had mentioned were what type of effect would it have on the ground, and how would I do this project? There won't be any heavy equipment that goes back here on either the screen porch side or the new open deck, just because I can't have heavy equipment cross my leaching field. I won't let it, and it can't come through the back because there's big rocks over there. So everything will be done by either a hand, like a power hand auger, or post hole digger. The footings will be 48 inches deep. I think that's what Massachusetts requires to get below the frost line. So unless you guys, unless someone on the committee knows something different, that's what my research tells me. I don't know how many post holes I will have to dig, but I'm guessing at least on the back side of the house where the open deck is, probably 5 or 6, I'm guessing, to support that weight. We haven't done a formal plan that's been approved by an engineer, simply for the fact that we're with you folks tonight, and that's the next step. The deck itself, I'm guessing it's about 30 years old, so something has to happen. We need to replace it in some form or fashion. So this is what we're hoping to do. It does try to utilize the existing footprint as best as possible. Obviously, right now it's all permeable, and if we take a portion of this existing deck and we add a roof to it, that creates an issue where water is going to drip down the roof. My thought was, I'm going to put gutters on both sides of that roof, and then I can direct it in whatever form or fashion is most consistent with the way that the water permeates right now. I mean, it goes straight down. I can route it into rain barrels. I can route it into the ground, into a gravel ditch. I can route it over into the side of the yard, or I can have it go straight down the hill. I mean, like I said, right now it just goes, that area is flat. It's pretty flat up there where the existing deck is, so it just basically goes straight in. Can't remember if I'm missing any other information, but to be succinct, I'll stop there and see if others have questions.
Well, I have a few, there's some information that I feel is missing here, but what's foremost in my mind is the question of whether or not this should be reviewed as an RDA, or do we believe that this should be taken to an NOI? And
are you looking for a straw poll?
I just want to add that in the name of consistency, projects that are proposed in Riverfront area that are increasing impervious surface, which would be the case with the new screen porch and its roof, we have requested a notice of intent. So, and that's what I feel is needed here.
I agree. I think with what you just said, I agree with. I was thinking the same thing. And therefore, I think it lends itself to an NOI.
Can someone please help me explain what the difference between the RDA and the NOI is?
Anna, do you want to do that?
I would love to pass it to somebody else, but if I must, I could do it, I guess.
Well, it'd be good practice for you, right?
Sure. Yeah. It's a much more detailed application that will give I would rather either pull it up in the bylaws and so take a second to pull that up, or have someone else do it.
Okay, I'll take a crack at it. It's a lengthier application. It gets a pass review by DEP before DEP will sign off on it. It has a greater fee. It requires a hearing. Well, this is a hearing, but it also requires a hearing. It requires that your abutters are notified that you're planning this project. So it has an educational component. As a commission member, what I see as the benefit, if you will, the protection benefit of it is that when a project is approved through an NOI, it gets conditioned, and the conditions have have to be verified when the project is over, when the applicant obtains a certificate of compliance. So it's a way of guaranteeing that the conditions that we impose on a project are actually carried out. Whereas with an RDA, we have no mechanism for making sure that the way we asked you to build the project, and I don't mean you, I mean the way one applicant is asked to build the project is actually followed. So that's in a nutshell.
And I would just add, I think that, you know, the RDA process really is a process of determining whether or not there's the potential for significant adverse impacts to jurisdictional areas. And so, you know, within our tendency or the sort of the history of it has been that when you get close to a resource area, certainly if it's in the inner 50 feet, if you're talking about a bordering vegetated wetland, or here if you're talking about riverfront, that the idea is that when there is a chance of some adverse impact, the greater amount of sort of documentation and sort of oversight that comes from the commission is more helpful in making sure that jurisdictional areas are not adversely impacted. So we can determine through an RDA that we don't think, you know, the likelihood is very small, but we sort of, there's sort of a presumption when you get into riverfront or the inner buffer that there is going to be some kind of impact unless it's conditioned properly, which is why we tend in these kinds of situations, just historically, we generally ask for an NOI.
I just wanted to also remind the commission of a project that we reviewed last year. I don't remember the specific address. I think it was on Pleasant Street, but the family they had a deck, they were building a second story over the deck and putting a roof on it. So they were turning pervious surface into impervious surface, and they were next to an intermittent stream. So they were in the 50-foot alteration zone of an intermittent stream, and we required a notice of intent for that.
I remember that one.
Very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question, Mark? Okay, so you're muted, but that's okay. Let me just pivot and just other commission members. Oh, hi, Mark.
Hi, I'm sorry, I muted myself. I was just going to note that the only difference from what I just heard was that I'm not within that 50-foot limit.
Sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to interrupt. The difference here actually is that your project is actually within a resource area. Because, you know, if it was just a bordering vegetated wetland, the wetland itself is a resource area, and then, you know, those buffer zones outside of it are to, you know, we maintain those to protect the resource area, but a riverfront area is a bit of a different, you know, situation, whereas it's not just the river, but the 200 feet outside of the riverfront area is considered a resource area of its own. I mean, Neil, Jean, please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's true. And I think the terminology gets confusing to someone who doesn't use it all the time. But
yeah,
if you want to think of, instead of saying resource area, you could think of the entire riverfront area, which is the 200 feet laterally out on either side of the stream, as a wetland, because it's treated regulatorily as a wetland.
That is a much better explanation. Thank you, Jean.
Yeah, and sorry, when we use the terminology resource area, that's sort of synonymous with wetland, except in a situation like this, which is a riverfront area 200 feet on either side. So that's so you're in the outer buffer of a bordering vegetated wetland, but you're within a resource area, which is within the riverfront area. And so that's why you end up, I mean, I would say that if you were going to try any sort of activity within a wetland, which is another type of resource area, there would be no question that you would need an NOI, any kind of work there. So it's sort of it's a similar situation where you just by virtue of the fact that your house is in riverfront area and you're wanting to do something that increases impervious surface, we always asked for NOIs. And it doesn't, I mean, it's a little bit more of a lengthy process. There's more detail to it and that kind of thing, but it also, you know, we just make sure that we're protecting resource areas, which we have to, or, you know, we have a regulatory responsibility to do it.
I
Sure.
realized that I left out of both the application summary that the commissioners have and in my report, something pretty important that I learned from Mass DEP, which is that part of the Massachusetts regulations or the Wetland Protection Act riverfront area rules, regulations are that within 200-foot riverfront areas, the issuing authority may allow the alteration of up to 5,000 square feet or 10% of the riverfront area within the lot, whichever is greater on a lot recorded on or in or before 1997, October 6, 1997, or for lots after October 6, 1997, up to 10% of the riverfront area. So this is something that, you know, we can't eyeball. This is something that we may be even more of a case for an NOI, because the house may be, the existing house and deck may be that 10% already.
It doesn't, the 10% does not pertain just to the new work that is being proposed. It pertains also to the existing house.
So
I'm not sure I follow that. I'm not increasing I mean, what's there is there already. I'm not gonna expand that footprint to either side, right? It is what it is.
Well,
it's not.
I'm sorry, you want to go ahead, Anna?
Go ahead, Anna.
The languages may allow alteration of up to this 10% of the riverfront area. So the proposed open deck and the whatever square, if there's any additional square footage of the new screened-in porch over the old deck.
No, there's not.
Okay. So this says that and this is not something I'm very familiar with. I will admit that I'm reading out of the regulations of something I learned very recently, but that it's alteration of the riverfront area. So I would assume that includes like also the driveway. Well, actually, but that's not. So in the riverfront area includes some of the driveway. So I guess that would include alteration in the driveway. Like, so it's possible that there's 10% already there and you couldn't have an inch more according to this regulation.
Hold on. Sorry, Michael, did you want to say something? I was going to say something.
Yeah, when I used to read that, I didn't read it as a fully cumulative.
It is.
That's
event,
what the person I talked to at DEP said today.
even if it was grandfathered in from before.
Yes.
But then it's 10%. Okay, yeah, I mean, I was leaning. I mean, right, it wasn't for the riverfront, right? Obviously, it could be done as, not obviously, I would lean towards an RDA. And given I guess the fact that it's actually in a resource area, and I'm not sure that an RDAs are appropriate can be applied actually in a resource area.
Well, I mean, DEP is telling Anna that it's possible to apply it. I think the only difference is that we as a commission, I mean, just have never done it that way. You know, when it's in a resource area, we've always required an NOI. It's just what we've done with everybody. I mean, I think if there was a way, like, I agree with you, Michael, I think if it's in the outer buffer and it would just, you know, it wouldn't be a big deal, but it's not, it's riverfront.
Yeah, I guess I'd add that it's sort of that even to you, Mark, and even to the rest of us, that whether it's impervious or not, I mean, that issue, people bring it up, but I guess from a regulatory point of view, it does seem like we're sort of being pointed towards an NOI just because of the activities in a resource area. Whether it has impervious or not changes. And I don't think I want to hang our decision on the impervious issue versus the fact that it's an activity in a resource area. I'm on the fence, but I think,
Right.
but I don't know what's.
So yeah, I was going to ask what other commission members think in terms of whether or not RDA versus NOI in this situation. Carol or Cindy, if you want to weigh in, or Courtney.
Can you see my hand up?
Oh, no, I can't because your
Oh,
background.
you know, I'm going to change my background because it's the second time tonight that I've had my hand up and no one's noticed it. So I will.
Sorry.
So
Go ahead.
that's fine. So here's my question. Based on what Anna just brought up, that DEP told her about the, you know, the 10% thing. I'm wondering if this kind of needs to go in 2 steps. So my mind is just thinking, well, do we need to first figure out whether what is currently there is already 10%? Because then that sort of negates an NOI entirely and negates anything happening, as opposed to going right to the NOI and we don't even know if, you know, 10% is already, that 10% is already achieved. So does that make sense? Like that we need to go in steps and first determine whether or not there's any room to wiggle in that 10%?
Or whether there's even room, I mean, it makes some sense what you're saying, or whether there's even room to wiggle around that 5,000 and 10%, like could one do mitigation? I mean, is that, I mean, we've never, in all the years I've been here, we've never confronted this kind of hard, anything like a hard limit of 5,000, 10%, not that we've done projects that have come close to that.
Can I just ask real quick, is it 10% of my property that borders the riverfront? Is that it?
The riverfront area on your property. I think that's the same thing as what you just said. Yes.
No, it's different. Anna, he asked, is it 10% of his property? It's 10% of the riverfront area that is on his property. So not all of his property is covered by riverfront area.
Right, but I guess my what I was going to say is my property actually extends quite far to the right on that drawing, 2 acres worth. So I would have a hard time believing that I'd be covering 10%.
So,
but we need to calculate it.
So
who's going to calculate it? Am I going to have to hire another environmental engineer and hire another surveyor to do this?
Yes.
So here's what I suggest that we do. I think, well, listen, let me back up a step because I want to sort of do a straw poll before we get into the 10% thing. Do members of the commission feel that an NOI is appropriate if the work can go forward?
Yes.
Carol?
You know, I do think so, even though I know that it can be confusing for a resident when they're confronted with this, but it's very common for us to expect to have an NOI. Just Mark, for your information. I really liked Cindy's suggestion to just, let's understand more about this.
I know, but I asked a very specific question because I just want to approach it in a certain way. So can we just bear with me for a second? So Carol, you're in support of an NOI. Cindy, I'm assuming that if the work was allowed to go forward, you would rather have it as an NOI versus an RDA. Is that correct?
Yes, I'd rather have it as an NOI with that caveat that you put in there.
Okay.
About the 10%.
Right. And then Michael, you were on the fence, so I'm not sure where you are, but are you feeling the same way about NOI instead of RDA?
No, I'm on the fence about that myself.
Okay. All right. So that's the straw poll. And I'm assuming, Jean, you already said it, so I don't have to ask you. And I feel just to be consistent and fair to every resident in town that we've ever asked to do it, and we'll ask again, that an NOI is more appropriate for this particular thing. I think the next step, honestly, with this 10% thing is I'd like to get some real clarification from DEP. I would like Anna to reach out to them, find out exactly what that means, and sort of, you've already talked to them about this project. I'd like them to kind of give you the feedback that we can then come back and discuss. And what I would say is, Mr. Albers, I would not have you go forward with a NOI application just yet. I'd rather have this, just get really clear about this, because I think to say, oh, well, you know, I'm loath to tell any homeowner they can't make a small alteration or do a project. I want to be absolutely sure that that's a real problem before we say, you know, okay, well, you know, let's get the surveyor out. I don't want to do that. I'd rather just get really buttoned up information from DEP and then figure out what the next steps are, if everybody's okay with that.
I don't think you asked Courtney what she felt.
Okay, so you don't want to comment on what I said?
Who, me?
No, Jean, you're pointing out something from what I asked before.
I am. I think clarification from DEP would be very helpful.
Okay. To your point about Courtney, were you tending toward NOI or RDA?
If it wasn't a riverfront area, I would consider it minor enough to be an RDA, but we've always done riverfront areas because it's a resource area, as much as it kills me to say that.
Okay. So Mark, I think what we should do is let Anna do some investigation on this 10% issue, get you that feedback before you do anything else. And then we can work with you through Anna to figure out what next steps are. Does that seem like a reasonable approach?
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I think that is it for now, right? It's a hearing, so do we have to do anything to continue it?
Well, we're not voting whether to give it a negative or a positive, so yeah.
Yeah.
We have-
Do we need an extension?
An extension for what?
For with an RDA?
Well, it sounds like because we want input from DEP,
Mhm.
which might influence our decision of Riverfront versus RDA, I mean, of NOI versus RDA, that we are not prepared to vote on this RDA. Is that correct?
I think that's right. I think we should just continue it to the next meeting and get the information in between.
Yes, but I thought there was a 21-day period where we need to get the
Yes, we have
applicant's
to ask.
permission.
We have to ask the property owner for permission to waive the 21-day deadline.
Mark, Mark, are you okay with us waiving the 21-day deadline so that we can continue this hearing to our next meeting?
Yeah, if you can tell me, Neil, that we'll talk about it at the next meeting, I'd be okay with that.
Okay, great. So then I move that we continue this hearing until whatever the date is. What is the date?
March 3rd.
March 3rd at what time?
8:30.
8:30.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mark. I have a second. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Neil, aye. Carol?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you. All right. Well, we've got on our agenda the NOI for Coolidge Street, but has that been formally withdrawn?
Yes.
Yes. So
I
does
can-
everybody know what happened with that?
No, can you update us?
I would be happy to read some excerpts from the email from Roy and Todd McDowell, if that would be appropriate.
Sure, go right ahead.
So Roy McDowell and Todd McDowell of Baystone said Baystone will no longer be pursuing the permitting of this project. They said, as you may know, Pulte recently decided to no longer pursue permitting of the over 55 project, and they let their PNS expire. Their reasons were associated with mitigation and construction costs with Framingham and Natick that had become overly burdensome. In addition to costs, there was the complexity of needing town meeting votes in Sherborn, Framingham, and Natick, as well as state permits. And then they also said, we very much appreciate the time spent by the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Conservation Commission, the Select Board, and the Planning Board.
So Pulte project is dead. The Coolidge Crossing project is dead. They also did pay us a compliment on our handling of their hearing and the process that we put it through. So it's nice to get some positive feedback as well. Okay. We have a request for a certificate of compliance for 15 Apple Street.
Yes.
Do we actually have to close the hearing, or I guess it doesn't?
They withdrew their application.
Okay, so I guess not, good. Sorry.
All right, 15 Apple Street. Anna, were you gonna?
Yes, so I put in the Dropbox, actually Elizabeth put in the Dropbox, the photos from our nice little, the second installation of our beautiful little wetland boundary markers. These are some that have drill holes in them so they could be put up on the fence. And that is the very last thing in the order of conditions for 15 Apple Street. So in the Dropbox, you have the letter requesting the certificate of compliance. And this markers was the very last thing. They were waiting for us to have the markers. And so I believe that it's just a vote from the commission for a certificate of compliance.
That's what you recommend.
That is what I recommend.
I have a few questions.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Okay. I was just rereading the order of conditions, and I just have questions if people can help me understand. Number 10 and 11, page 4 out of 10. I was wondering how, well, maybe I need to read it. I don't know. I was wondering how we ensure that it takes place. So maybe I need to pull that up and see what, because I didn't write it down, but I was,
yeah, we don't have it in front of us, so.
Yep. Well, let me pull it up, you know. Okay. The Sherborn, this is number 10. The Sherborn Conservation Commission shall be notified in writing at the time of all transfers of title on this property prior to the issuance of the, prior to the issuance. Okay, if we're issuing that right now, then it doesn't matter. And then 11, did we get a signed, 11 is a signed document indicating that the new owner has read the order of conditions shall be forwarded to the commission upon passing the property from one owner to the next.
But I don't think there's been a property transfer.
No, this is talking about a signed document. This condition applies even after the issuance of a certificate of compliance, condition to remain in perpetuity. And my question about that is, my question isn't number 11, but it's about number 11. What is the mechanism that we ensure that this takes place? I guess I just don't understand what the mechanism is. Can anyone explain that to me?
I would simply say that when the certificate of compliance is issued, and in light of the fact that there is not a new owner yet, right? Am I right about that? That the cover letter for this certificate of compliance states very clearly that the seller pass on the requirement to the new owner to sign something saying that they are, what is it? What does the condition say? The new owner what?
It just says that it's like what they had to do for, I think it's 121 Woodland, but a signed document indicating that the new owner has read the order of conditions shall be forwarded to the commission upon passing the property from one owner to the next. I know that they haven't sold it right now, and I'm not even saying that they're going to sell it, but 10 years down the road, what is the mechanism to know that happens? That's all I'm asking. I mean, if it happened next week, that's one thing. If it happens 5 years down the road, what's the mechanism that trips that so that anyone knows that happens?
Have we ever done it?
It's been in a lot of orders, so I don't know, maybe Elizabeth can tell us, but what I'm imagining is that the property will change hands soon, and that the existing owner be told that it's a requirement that he or she share this condition with the new owner. That's the best we can
So
do.
you're basically saying it's going to go in the letter to
Yeah,
this.
there is no mechanism. If the certificate
Okay.
of compliance has already been issued, there is no mechanism.
Okay, so there's no mechanism. That's my answer. Okay.
Other than a letter.
Yep.
Cindy, are you asking, I think in asking the mechanism, you're also might be asking, do we ever get those letters? Because it looks like new homeowners, if they get an order of conditions like this, should actually be sending letters to the conservation agent saying, I've read this.
Right, and we did get that on the property. I believe it's the property on Woodland, and I think it's 121, but I could be wrong on that number address, but it's Woodland, and it's the one that Dan actually referred to tonight. It's that, Michael, I think you said you guys were looking at buying that house. Do you know the house I'm talking about on Woodland?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, they actually did have the new owners sign this letter that's referred to here, but that all transpired in a very short time after they wanted the certificate of compliance. So therefore it triggered the letter to the commission almost immediately, because not immediately, but almost immediately, because it was all in a very short time. I'm just asking, like, if this happens 10 years down the road, what's the mechanism to trigger that? Or there is none. I got my answer from Jean, there is none. That's all. So there is none. So somebody has to either remember that, or, the owner has to remember that, or somebody from the commission has to remember that and has to still be sitting on the commission. I have a question about
file, Cindy.
Hmm?
It can go in the file. A note about it can go in the file.
Okay, is that a separate thing that we need to do? Like, that we need to state that we're going to do?
That's a suggestion I'm making.
Okay. I mean, that's great. That sounds good.
By the way, this condition only just emerged not that long ago. I think Elizabeth has an order of conditions for her own property, and she shared it with us that this condition was in her order, and we thought, oh, that's good, let's put it in ours. So it hasn't been around for very long.
Yeah. So can I continue? So number 41, which is on page 9 of 10. It says the site will be monitored for a minimum of 2 years, or until such time as a certificate of compliance is issued. Oh yeah, here we go. Is issued to ensure the site remains stable and there's no erosion or potential erosion. So I guess the thing I was keying in on here was for a minimum of 2 years, but since we're issuing the certificate of compliance, then that negates the 2 years.
Yeah, if there are no, I don't remember the project very specifically, but if somebody has complied with their order and there were no conditions that involved planting or replication or mitigation.
Well, this specifically notes erosion. I know 2 years would typically be towards planting, but this one specifically says then there is no erosion.
I would direct you to.
I was trying to get to the point of saying if there was no planting, then it's at the commission's discretion whether or not to wait for 2 years. And
I see. Okay.
This actually had a lot less alteration than was anticipated, because they were able to use the same foundation of the existing building. And so there was a lot less than anticipated.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, that's it. I'm done with my questions. Thank you.
Can I
Carol?
make a comment? Yeah, I have a question as a follow-up to what Cindy was saying, because it is interesting, this idea of like, is there some triggering mechanism that makes sure that people pay attention to these orders of conditions? We've talked about this off and on. Do these orders of conditions become part of the deed? Like there's some, that would be the kind of thing that a new homeowner would notice, that, you know, when the deed is transferred, there's also an order of conditions they have to comply with. Do we know?
It does get registered with the,
It's recorded within the chain of title to the property. And then when the certificate of compliance is issued, it's removed from the chain of title. However, the history of that happening is, you know, it's going to show up. So even if the order of conditions is clear because they got a certificate of compliance, you can still see when you look at the deed, oh, this house had this document. And what does that mean? That means there are wetlands there. So it doesn't completely disappear. Does that answer your question?
It does. I'm not sure that that kind of solves the problem of somehow flagging it in such a way that a homeowner who's new to Sherborn and doesn't, you know, most people have no idea about how the Wetland Protection Act works, that they would then go to the trouble of investigating it. I know, you know, somebody who lived down the road from me asked me about an order of conditions that was still open on his property. I think that got flagged in the deed, in the transfer. But as you point out, I think once it's closed, it no longer happens.
isn't that one of the purposes of the wetland boundary markers?
Yep. Yes, indeed.
Well, do we think that it's a good idea to continue to use this language? It sounds like we just recently added it.
Well, unless somebody can think of another way to what's the word I'm looking for? Just said it 3 times, can't remember the word. But unless we can think of another mechanism. So I'd say, you know, by all means, put your thinking cap on and come up with another mechanism.
Because otherwise it may not be very effective.
So I'm just trying to connect up what we're talking about with this certificate of compliance. Is this something better suited for a different discussion?
I think we're finished.
Yeah, I think we're finished on this. I mean, I asked a question, I got the answer, and Jean's suggestion to put a note in the file, it sounds good. And, you know, otherwise I would imagine that if somebody were to buy the property and the lawyer's doing a title search, this is going to trigger when they're at the registry.
Well, anybody who's doing their due diligence is going to go around to all the departments in Sherborn and ask, you know, what have you got in your file on this property? And one click of the button is going to show a massive amount of documentation of a wetland. So if they don't ask, then that's a problem for them.
Right. No, I'm agreeing with you. And so I don't need to belabor it. I'm done belaboring this.
Okay.
Moving on.
Are we, is there anything more to discuss, or should we vote on this?
No, I don't think so. Sorry.
Okay. I move that we issue a certificate of compliance for the work that was completed on this project.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, Neil, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, do we want to talk about tree removal? Because we've got about 25 minutes before we have to do 0 Maple Street.
Yes, but I'm not prepared to lead the discussion. If somebody else who spent some time on this week wants to take it away, I say go for it.
Someone's already taken it, it appears.
It appears. You can't tell who shares a screen.
Oh, we know your
Well,
handwriting, Michael.
As long as it's not a Zoom bomber.
Maybe we can start approaching it. I sort of wrote up what the bigger issues before we figure out the wordsmithing of a particular thing that maybe we can run through. People might have other general issues, but this is my cut at some of the general issues that we can just sort of walk through and see where we come down on. And so I'll just start with.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? I expressed this to you in an email, Michael, and I think I expressed it to Cindy, but I got the ball rolling on this tree removal policy. I'm not in a position to carry it over the finish line. So I'm just saying that, it's something we really need, and I hope others among you are going to do that, carry it over the finish line.
We'll see how it goes. Hazardous, we have this thing. I just wanted to be clear, because when I read the definitions, you can see it here. And this was taken from sort of some other wording we had in the street trees, the public tree thing. This whole issue of immediacy. And I just wanted to get some clarity that we're dealing with threatening trees, really, in a sense of that we're not dealing with trees that have to come down immediately, or whether this is to cover that too, versus just a sort of a threatening tree policy. And this overlaps with also whether, well, we can see the next point there. So is that general issue clear to most people as to what the issue is and what it is we want to write this policy for?
Can I respond to that?
We're waiting.
I did a revision of what Jean put together, and it happens that a few years ago, I got a copy of a tree manual from the International Arborists Association or something. I've passed on to Anna, so I don't have it in front of me. It's meant as a guide for arborists to identify trees that are at risk and to, figure out whether they're threatening or hazardous and that kind of thing. It's actually like there's a whole science to it. And I think, and it's an interesting one. I mean, there certainly are very specific things that somebody with skill in trees can do to determine pretty definitively whether a tree is threatening or a tree will fall down. But the thing that it talks about is that looking at it not only from the point of view of the structural integrity of the tree, but then also could it hurt somebody or hurt property, right? So it's those two things, the structural integrity of the tree and the likelihood that it would fall, and what could it fall on. If the tree is in a wetlands and there's nothing much that it could damage, if it falls over, then it's not considered hazardous or threatening. On the other hand, if it's over a play area or over a house, it is. And I think we've kind of applied those rules already in a kind of common sense way. But I included it's not in front of us, but I included my understanding of Jean's intent was that there are situations where somebody wants an emergency certification because they actually feel that a tree is actively hazardous, usually because it's close to the house, it's dead or dying or has some very big limbs that could kind of fall at any moment. So my understanding, which maybe was wrong, but was that those are the kinds of things that come in front of us as emergency certifications, and how do we put some definition around that? So I guess, Michael, it seems like you're kind of opening it up to the broader question of, when people come in general to us about, I want to remove a tree. We've had plenty of people who've come and said, look, there's this row of perfectly healthy pine trees, but if they fall over, they're going to fall on my roof. And therefore I want to remove them. So I guess I would just ask whether we want to go through the whole that kind of tree policy aspect, which I think with the guidance of, for instance, that manual that I sent to Anna, that would probably be helpful, but, or whether we actually want to address this issue that would help Anna right now, which is, you know, when people come with emergency certification, what are some of the characteristics that we can put into it to guide her and to guide residents?
But that's the issue of whether, if it's are we dealing, I guess then maybe I'm a little confused, because I thought that if it's an emergency that somebody needs to do very quickly, then we do have an emergency, that this was an alternative to the emergency if something's really, I guess it's hard to decide. I mean, actually, I don't need to make the definition between urgency and urgency, because part of my issue is going to hinge a little bit more on your point of saying that, yes, there's a whole science of determining the structural integrity of a tree, but that in the past, we struggled with that, in that we dropped that part of it, because we've been finding trees that have been falling that had no obvious structural integrity issues. And that when it was something that was threatening to basically risk of personal injury or property damage, that we could no longer make that call, and we couldn't necessarily make that call by saying call an arborist and getting a full structural assessment, that wasn't practical, or that it opened us up to too much uncertainty. I mean, that we still couldn't definitively, when you use the word definitively determine, that wasn't any longer the case. We'll see with our 50-mile-an-hour winds tonight. But so I guess that's maybe a more general principle of whether I'll step back and say, who cares whether we call it hazardous or threatening or endangering or whatever. But what level of scrutiny are we going to require for a tree that can hit a house or hit people? And I guess I'll leave it at that, is that I'm struggling with that whole issue here. We have lots of multi-pronged pines, multi-branch trunk pines that maybe almost by definition have some structural problems. But I guess as a whole, we need to figure out, what kind of, do we going to require somebody to go out and get an arborist review for these possibilities, which we've somewhat stopped doing in the last number of years. Besides,
I've said this before, but I wasn't on the commission when the commission stopped requiring an arborist. And at first, when I heard that, I was very surprised, but this is a risky business. If somebody feels threatened by a tree and we say, no, wait a minute, it's still valuable to us and we want to hear it from a professional, and that takes time or money. And in the meantime, something happens and does damage, that doesn't serve us very well. And using the emergency certification for this is, I mean, it's not going to work. Nobody can get a trees person out there in 30 days. That's the reason we're doing this. To have something that, Anna can decide by doing a site visit, and she is gathering, getting her expertise little by little, and issuing permission for people to cut down certain trees right away, and that this permit has a lifetime to it of something greater than 30 days. These nuancy questions that you're asking are important. And we can try to set up a framework or some guidelines for Anna that are something like, if the trees are dangerous, but there doesn't seem to be any way they would hit anything and harm anything, then, don't sign that up to be removed. If the tree is yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to come up with the specifics, but I think we can formulate guidelines for Anna to use with this application. But I don't think we should, I think one good way to do this, and this doesn't seem to be everybody's method, is to, try to act quickly to put this together, have her use it, and have her come back to us in 3 months and say, this works really well, but this doesn't. And then it's only a policy, so we can always change it.
But it's superseding, it's basically saying, I agree with you, but it's superseding an RDA kind of process that we've pushed things before. So yeah, no, I guess what I started out with was maybe I didn't want to get into refining. It's something that's urgent. I like the threatening tree kind of definition or whatever, but I'm not sure we need a definition other than it's a tree that has I guess maybe the definition, whether we call it threatening or not, the definition there of a substantial risk is the range of trees that were willing to fall under this policy, which is somehow superseding an RDA, but it's only for the outer buffer zone. Just to be clear, and I want to be clear, raise it again before of that, the way it was written was only for dead trees, that I assume we're also including live trees.
I think it says dead or dying.
Okay. So
or a large limb that's likely to fall.
So we're not going to include, so if you see a pine tree that's looking healthy and multi-pronged and is near a house, but is not dying or dead, that wouldn't be covered by this.
I would recommend that it go through an RDA.
Okay.
If it doesn't seem to have the obvious signs.
Okay, so we are limiting this thing to something that the structural issue is basically related to the fact that it's dead or dying. It's the terminology we want to put in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had put in according to USDA, a hazard tree is a tree that has a structural defect that makes it likely to fail in whole or in part. And then we said, if you're concerned that a dead or dying tree or large limb is likely to fall where it could cause injury or property damage, it may be considered a hazardous tree. I will admit that leaves a fair amount of leeway, Michael, to Anna or the commission. Well, I guess Anna, if these are, coming to her in this emergency situation, but probably a lot of the times when people are asking about hazardous trees, they really are visibly, they look like they're going to fall down. That doesn't happen all the time.
Not necessarily.
No.
And I have actually on the agenda under the agent's report, an example of something that I actually need your guidance, help on what to do, a particular address, 60 Goulding Street. And I would love to go through that. And I think that we could talk about how, this as an example of something that would need to go through a policy, see how the policy would fit on this. And I also wanted to say that Carol, your revision, I really like it.
I would suggest that, with the chair's permission, that we just go to that exam, given that we have 10 minutes before the NOI and the meeting's going to run late, whether we just deal with her site issues. And we'll pick up this stuff on the tree another time, but pick up the site issue that Anna mentioned and think about these issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anna.
Michael, if you stop sharing your screen, I can share mine. So I just went out to 60 Goulding Street East again. This is somebody who got in touch with us I think Joyce and I went out there in November, and we had said, we're going to be able to issue an emergency certification, but let us know when you have a tree person. And she reached out, the property owner reached out about a week ago and said, okay, I've got my tree person, issue your emergency certification. And I had to tell her, well, we're in the process of changing our thinking. The commission is in the process of changing its thinking. So what you have here in this first picture, well, it's pretty big already. So the wetlands there's wetlands right along the back of this property. And there are 3 trees on the property that she's requesting to take down. One is, this tree on the far left, which is a deciduous tree. It's dead. I'm sure it's of a specific species, but I don't have the specific knowledge at the ready to go out and identify that with no foliage on it. So this is a dead tree. It's right on the edge of the wetland. That's one of them. The house is here to the right, so it's quite a tall tree. It could potentially fall on the house, potentially. The second tree, I'll show you a larger picture of it in just a second, is this multi-stem pine tree, which she says she has had an arborist come out to do an estimate, and the arborist said that it has very shallow roots, and she said that the base is rotting. And so she's concerned about this multi-stem pine tree falling, or parts of it falling on the house. This is a different picture of it. It's not, to the untrained eye, you can't tell that the base is rotting, but to, she said that an arborist came and said that the roots are very shallow and that this was a problem tree. And the third is this tree, which is another deciduous tree that is dead and is, I suppose with it, if it fell in the direction of the house, then it's tall enough that it could do damage to the house. So, that's something that's on your plate tonight to decide, what should I do? How, RDA, emergency certification, a little of both. New tree policy.
The new tree policy is not ready, unfortunately.
And they want to do it now. So an RDA they have somebody ready now. So even an RDA is a delay in there.
Correct.
So
I was going to say I would go with an RDA. I would go with an RDA because, Jean, I think you said we can put conditions in an RDA.
Yeah.
And we can put conditions in an emergency certification, but not just like we can.
So I wouldn't call this an emergency at this point because it was November and now we're in February. So not much of an emergency.
I don't think we can say that it's not going to fall tonight.
I'm not saying that it's not going to fall. I'm just saying if you wait 4 months, it's not really.
They're dead trees.
Well, anyway, they are dead trees and they are going to come down. I guess my biggest point on asking about conditioning is because as I read Jean's draft on the hazard tree draft, and then Carol's, and then I read Carol's how Carol went over it. I felt like the mitigation piece was important Especially around the wetland where these trees at one point in time had been shading the wetland. And so the mitigation piece to me, or planting trees when you take one down, is important. And that's what the tree policy captures. And I guess that's what the RDA would capture. And I didn't understand that an emergency certification could capture that. But if it can, great.
Okay, I'm remembering what we heard from DEP recently with respect to the repair that we allowed to the rail trail, and DEP's comments about providing the DPW with a letter allowing them to go ahead with the work before they had actually filed an NOI. And DEP said this is not, legitimate. Then further, DEP said that when you issue an emergency certification, the only thing you are allowing is work that will abate the emergency. And my interpretation of that is that, if the homeowner feels it's an emergency, and if it looks like to Anna, like the trees are going to hit the house if they fall, then an emergency certification can be issued just for the removal of the trees. But I don't think we should be conditioning emergency certifications anymore, because, based on what DEP said, all it does is allow us to give them permission to abate the emergency, period. This whole idea of conditioning, I probably sound like I'm contradicting myself, and I'm sorry for that, but a determination, yes, we can put conditions on it, but there is no mechanism other than Anna having a huge amount of free time and knocking on people's doors and saying, hey, can I come and look? We have no mechanism for checking on whether or not they have actually followed through on the conditions. And the same, once we adopt this policy, if we require mitigation planting, there's no mechanism there either. So we just have to get comfortable with telling people, yes, you can make this alteration, you can cut these trees down. We want you to replace them by a mitigation planting. So go on your merry way and do that. But we're never going to check. You just have to rely on people doing what we tell them is the right thing to do. So I'm starting to feel like in this particular case, since Anna already told the woman she would give her an emergency certification when she had a tree person at the ready, I think we should just follow through with that for this particular case.
I agree. And the question is if we want to condition it, whether we ask such as an after the fact RDA. But that I agree that given what we had told her before and what she lined up, that
I would say if we're going to go with what we told her before back in November, an emergency cert, that we just don't even bother doing an after the fact RDA, because we told her, if we told her an emergency certification, just stick with that at this point for this situation, for this particular situation, just stick with that and go forward. Forget about an after the fact RDA.
I agree.
I see that. I'm trying to get at that issue of mitigation, but but right, we were told, right, I would like, right, now we can't put mitigation in an emergency cert because of what we were told.
And it's actually 10:15.
So may I go ahead and issue an emergency certification for these 3 trees, the 2 deciduous and the pine with shallow roots?
And are they're leaving the stump?
I would tell them that we always ask people to leave the stump. And I could even put in, as I did before, that, we strongly encourage people to leave snags.
Right.
Why wouldn't we automatically say that they should be snags, actually, for those ones that are close to the wetlands, especially? I can understand the one that's more in the lawn. They may want to have, and aesthetically, they may want not to have a snag, but along the wetlands, I think that could be good habitat.
Seems like maybe we should continue this discussion after going forward with.
No, let's just do this, please.
Yeah.
Well, again, I'm going to go back to, what Anna told her back in November. And there's probably no mention of snags. I would say, let's just get this, she can write, this emergency certification permits the removal of trees A, B, and C, but not the removal of stumps, period. And until we have a tree policy in place, I think Anna's going to have to come back to us with all of these tree removal requests.
Yep, I agree. Do we need to vote?
I agree with that because it's not necessary to remove, like Jean said, it's just necessary to abate the hazard. So there shouldn't be anything with the stump. It's just the part of the tree that's going to fall in the house.
Right. But you go to the point of requiring an after the fact RDA. But in this situation, I think we've decided not to do that. Do we need to vote?
I don't think so.
Great. Okay. Anna, go let them know. Okay. All right. We're reopening the hearing into 0 Maple Street.
Yep.
So it's my understanding we received a lot of materials about 24 hours ago. Am I right about that?
Yeah,
Anna? Oh,
it was
Regine.
late. It was late. It was midnight on
Tuesday.
Right. So what are we prepared to discuss or not discuss tonight? Because I
think it makes sense. I would suggest that Dr. Wang, if he's prepared to go over, show us some, share his screen, show some of the things that he has changed the plan on, and talk about some of the comments, but that we allow the commission more time to read it, look at it, discuss it, and to continue the hearing for that discussion.
I think that's a good idea. Okay.
Thank you, Anna. We received comments from Mike and Cindy, who attended the sidewalk. And so there's lots of questions, and it is some field work for that tree surveying. So that's why it takes a little bit of time to compile the information. So if you look at, in summary, we basically pulled back our disturbance. So the dotted area, there's 3 hardwood trees will be saved, and 1 white pine probably can leave as a snack for habitat. And also there's another red maple tree in front of the lot that will be saved, because it looks like we are not going to have a significant grading over there at this point. So the tree impact is reduced to 15. And then we have 6 dead trees, basically white ashes. So the hollow the circle. And we are proposing to plant 7 snags around the limit of disturbance as wildlife habitat. In addition to that, we're also proposing 6 mitigation trees. And seems like from Mike's comment that we, at the sidewalk, as we show, you can see there's plenty trees over there, and but lacking understory growth. So I thought at this, that's what my understanding in that shade is. So we just need to add in more screening understory growth. So it seems like Mike thinking we need more trees. So we propose 6 more trees, 3 red maples and 3 red oaks, which is found in this area. So most of the trees right now proposing cut pine trees. So it's really tall pine trees, which is, you can see around in the house, all the pine trees are taller than 100 feet. So it's presenting like a hazard to the future homeowner. So that's the basic improvements. So with all the cut, we are reducing the older buffer zone from 10,000 roughly to a little bit less than 8,000. So it's like almost like a 2,000 square foot reduction. And we added trees and added snags, and we did pull the well back furthermore based on, but we have all the well zone, the septic setbacks, and you can see we cannot put on this side of the doctor well, which is already in septic setback. So therefore, this is the only area we can fit our well. So, and that's the condition. And Mike also commented on our septic systems. But if you look in the septic system, so this is 125 foot. We are almost right over there. And then we have the wells, the soil test pit. When you go down, the ground become pitching down. So we don't have the groundwater requirement. So this is the area pretty much cornered us to this for the septic system location. So we understand, and I appreciated all the members, conservation members, for trying to protect the environment, to reserve as much as buffer zone or protected them as much as we can. And I like to do that too. But on the other hand, we believe this is a single family house. We provided stormwater management and the roof recharge to mitigate any possible impact from a single family house, and to treat all the driveways, which it's not mandatory or required both in your bylaw and in the Wetlands Protection Act regulations. But we provided that just consciously so that we don't impact the environment or the wetlands to the maximum extent we can. And I did go over your bylaw, and I know I'm pretty familiar with the Wetlands Protection Act, working on under that almost 30 years. So there's not really any performance requirements as this case to the older buffer zone, which is minimum setback is 57 feet. So and also under your bylaw, the performance, it's also fair requirements are very simple. So it's only required the 50-foot indoor buffer zone, no alteration, which we observe. And we, on top of it, we are providing all these mitigations, which is, I believe, is beyond your bylaw requirements. So, and I understand your timeline, but the basic information is addressed and is illustrated by plans. And I understand members need some time, either go to the site to take a look. And on top of it, this land is a fairly mild sloped area. If everybody visited, can pretty much tell. So, which really also providing some kind of favorable conditions to mitigation. If there's any questions, I would answer the question, but I think I summarized my response to the comments. So if I miss anything, it's in
Sure.
writing.
Okay. Anna, did you have your hand raised?
I just want to have a
Sorry, I was asking Anna a question, Michael.
I know, but I want to rebut something that.
Well, I was asking Anna a question,
Okay,
if
fine.
just if
No.
she had her hand up or not. Okay.
No, I mean, I did, but I didn't mean to.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
I mean, I have a whole set of substantive issues. I just want to go on the record that what I wrote and what I said in the field were just ideas about things that might make a mitigation plan, that I was in no ways being prescriptive, other than suggestive of things that might be included in a plan. And that I even said in the field that come up with something that shows your sort of thinking about wetlands and creativity about what might be a good plan here. So I just want to go on record that nothing I was saying was meant to be prescriptive. So that's more of an administrative kind of thing for the record. I guess in terms of, moving on to the mitigation here, or what's being proposed overall, I guess there's this higher level that I know Carol wants to talk about mitigation as a whole. And I can't tell whether you, Carol, want to talk in a bigger picture versus I have a bunch of things about why certain areas still need to be included, like how we can reduce and avoid certain impacts, and before we even get to mitigation and enhancement.
Yeah,
So-
I did want to address some of the kind of bigger issues that are being raised.
I'll let you go with bigger issues before I have my list of very specific things. I'll come back later.
I think the comment about our protection of the buffer zone concerned me. In our bylaw in our regulations 4.2 buffer zones, it says buffer zones are any land within 100 feet horizontally outward from the upland edge of any resource area, with the exception of riverfront. And 4.3 says any alteration proposed or undertaken in a resource area or in a buffer zone is subject to regulation under the Sherborn bylaw. So the buffer zones are regulated as resource areas for us as part of our regulations. So I just wanted to make it clear that the 50 to 100 is regulated. And in fact, in my experience, since I've been on the commission, when we've had properties that come before us with no disturbance, we have protected the entire 50 to 100. So I just want to bring that up. The second point I had, and Neil, let me know if you want me to go through this now or wait till the next meeting, is to discuss the basic concept here, which seems to be, we're removing quite a bit of vegetation and then somehow mitigating by putting less vegetation in the same place. But Neil, I've shared those slides. Would you like me to go ahead and talk about that? Or I don't know how you're thinking about it, considering that we got so much of the information so late.
Right. So I think generally, if you just want to sort of make the point that you spoke to me about, just about what you consider mitigation to be, I think just generally you can certainly make that point now, because it's not related to the new information that we got Tuesday night.
Okay. So I shared with the commission a slide deck that I won't show, but I will summarize. It's about mitigation, and it defines mitigation as it means rectifying an adverse impact by repairing, rehabilitating, or restoring the affected resource area, or compensating for an adverse impact by enhancing or providing replacement resource areas. Typically, when we talk about repairing, rehabilitating, or restoring an area, it's an area that's already been negatively impacted. It's not an area that's being impacted by new development. The second thing about the criteria is, the first criteria is size. And what the WPA says is the surface of the replacement area to be created shall be equal to that of the area that will be lost, i.e. no net loss. And it's very clear that what is being proposed here is a net loss. It's in the comments that Desheng filed. So the criteria for size is 1:1 required by the WPA. So this is where the other thing we need to consider is connectivity, that any replacement areas have to continue to have a connectivity to the same wetland area. So this is where basically my comment comes, that this is not adequate mitigation because it is a net loss. And it's simply saying we're going to remove mature trees and then we're going to plant some saplings, and somehow we should consider that not to be a net loss or a degradation of the wetland. And I think it's both a net loss and a negative impact to the wetland. And therefore, and that by the definition set out by MACC for our education about this, it doesn't meet the definition of mitigation. So those were my kind of general comments that, overall, I feel that the kind of proposal that's being put before us does not adequately remove and minimize or just eliminate the issues of disturbance within our buffer, the 50 to 100 buffer. That's it. Neil, you're muted.
You muted, Neil.
Oh, it's me. I was unable to look at the new material, Deshang, because of when it came in and, what else is going on in my life. If I had had the time, I'd probably have some comments right now. So I, unfortunately can't contribute, but I know that I would be contributing if I had had time to look at this.
Thank you for acknowledging that.
Jean, are you acting as chair right now?
Why, what's happened to Neil? Is he unmuted? Is he?
He's muted, so I don't. And Michael has his hand up, so.
I wasn't aware of that, but sure. Michael, go ahead.
Okay, I mean, I don't know if other commissioners want to talk first. I guess in lieu of that, if nobody else can speak at the moment, I guess I'll come back to, in my comments to, on the project that I sent, the whole principle of sort of avoidance, reduction, mitigation, that I think we have a bigger picture that maybe the commission is somewhat split upon, is the whole issue of how the outer buffer is regulated compared to a resource area.
I don't know that we should get into that. Carol just read 4.2 and 4.3 in our regulations.
Right, and I didn't interpret it the same way that she did, but I'm not going to say anything more about it. I disagree with the read of the interpretation.
But I don't think that you can start speaking for everyone.
I know, I just said I. And we should have this discussion as part of maybe the regulatory review of how we view the buffer zone versus a resource area. I think is something that we need to clarify in our regs, what they mean. And that's an important topic that hopefully is on Jean's list or will be added to it. I will make, since I guess I'm getting the impression that that this is going to be continued and people want to review this, I'll give some quick feedback in the sense of some of my thoughts that could be reflected between now and then, and for others to think about, of that in the sense of reducing the impact here. For example, there's the area on the right, on the left, that little triangle beyond the enhanced area that I wonder whether that also could be left not as part of lawn. that it's basically reducing the amount of lawn area around the
You're
house.
talking about here, right?
What's that?
Here, right? This area?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. So I think we are not proposing much of activity there. That's why there's a
Then
trees there. We didn't even.
Then formally come back with something about reducing the amount of lawn, because lawn is not considered particularly good buffer zone. And that way it minimizes, it reduces the possible impact and the impact on the buffer zone, as well as being more definitive about the area around the well that can be restored, as you hint at it in your comment. That area around the well could also not necessarily be lawn, but be some other kind of more appropriate buffer zone there, so that I feel like there's clearly some areas there to minimize the amount of buffer zone, to lessen, what's that, minimize? To say to lessen the area of buffer zone impact on both the left side and on the right side, as part of moving towards some possible solution here. The idea of, and even there's a matter of whether there's other lawn area that could be reduced, sort of a little bit north, I mean, above the where you're putting in the dry well there, that there could be less lawn area over there as well. I could see where. And the issue of, it gets a little tricky for us when, and your language there about a 45 by 70 foot home that you'd like to do less of, but you want to get it into the record so that you could use all of that, that you might be more realistic about whether that's about over 3,000 square feet, which normally I wouldn't comment on. That's up to the owners to do whatever they want there, except for the fact that a significant part of that is in the outer buffer zone, and that's another area for possible reduction of impact. I can understand how the tree cutting, even if the house size is reduced, are still endangering trees. So I could understand that a number of those white pines might be an issue there. The where you put the dry well, maybe that tree, I don't know, I can't remember the quality of that black oak, where that's another tree that could be maintained, that whether the dry well could be put to another place on the property there. And then there's a little less impact there in terms of tree cover and crown in the outer buffer zone. And whether, so therefore, I think there's some areas to consider for reduction. And in terms of the mitigation that might countervail that, right, the idea of whether, I'd have to think about it, and we'd have to talk when others review it, more about the whole idea of the fern or some sort of ground cover for some significant areas like you have there, the 1777, or whether that's even more. I guess it's not less of my expertise of whether that is truly an enhancement of the outer buffer that could mitigate against some of the buffer that becomes lawn or house. And whether to consider that even the pattern of and the size of the in terms of mitigation and enhancement of these rhododendrons and the others, and the high bush blueberry and winterberry, where they could even be of more substantive size, and the trees could be a little bit more clearly larger than a 2-inch minimum. And I'm not prepared to comment at the moment about the particular location of the planting, of where they are. There's others who tend to do better, but there might be a little bit more boosting of just even the mitigation side after reduction that could be a more substantive mitigation. And let's see, my last thing was just looking at some notes. I guess I'll stop for there and let some other people, if anybody wants to speak.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in. I didn't realize that we were getting into nitty gritty sort of detail like this. But I'm gonna run with that now that Michael has started down that track. So just a couple of things that I would look at and point out. Michael said avoidance or reduction. Along the lines of avoidance, I'm wondering if the house can be situated on the lot so that it is completely outside of the 100. If there's a way to creatively locate that house on the lot so that you can get the size house that you want on the lot, but it's just oriented differently on the lot. And I'll leave that to Deshang to think about because that's what he does. So that would avoid. And then secondarily, I would say, okay, if you can't avoid, which I'm not entirely convinced that you can't, that you would not be able to avoid. I think maybe you could in some way, shape, or form. But if not avoid, then reduce. So could the size of the house be reduced to get it outside of the buffer? And then the other thing I would just say is, so I'm looking at this, and if you drop the proposed well to the east, so towards the center of town down Maple Street, and you keep it outside of the blue dotted lines, which I assume the blue dotted lines are for the septic, that you have to be outside of that because it's the septic. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So what about, yep. Okay. Now take your cursor. Oh. I wanted, well, where you were down on that blue dotted line. Can you drop it a little bit more? Okay. No. Okay. Well, anyway, if you get down on the blue dotted line where you were before, like way down, like down on where it kind of goes diagonally. Yep. You're getting there. What if you move out to the right?
No, you can put it here. There's a 50-foot setback from the roadway. This area you cannot put well.
Okay.
Cindy, I'll make a little comment that the well in a way is a fairly small temporary disturbance. So that,
yeah, I'm just concerned about the hydrology for the wetland, Michael, over the long term of use.
You think the drawdown issue?
I'm concerned about it.
Yeah, but I guess the depth, whether it's 50 feet, I mean, since you're doing a bedrock well, I would say that
200 feet.
That you're going down some hundreds of feet, and I think the issue of which location would be better for in terms of drawing water that might impact the wetlands is probably significant.
No matter, he answered my question anyway, so we don't need to believe.
I'm just saying that in general of pushing around the well, I've sort of come to the terms of that. It's sort of a temporary smaller disturbance, but right, I see that other issue that we brought up is a different one.
Does any other commission member have a comment?
Well, with Cindy, okay.
I do have my hands up for a while.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for the members to speak.
I wanted to see if any commission member wanted to speak
I
first.
appreciate. Yes, I understand that.
Okay, sounds like you're free to go ahead, but yeah, go ahead.
Right, I just want to make sure I heard all the questions. That's why I didn't mention it. So I definitely want to hear all the members' concern. And okay, that's as Carol commented, I just want to provide it. We did provide 22 shrubs, which is lacking right now. So in addition to the trees I added, and I'd like to discuss a little. I know Mike was trying to go into the outer buffer zone and resources. If MACC's handbook or the DEP's guidance for avoidance and the reduction and mitigation is really for resources. There's no such a thing was applying to buffer zone. So that's what I'm trying to point it out. At this, that's my knowledge. And the secondary, I'm reading your bylaw, as I said, if there's all the tree requirements, mitigation, I do appreciate the preservation of that, sequestration of carbon. I know all that too, probably any hardwood, if you grow a pond, you almost get half of 50% of carbon sequestration. So that's all good. And for small trees, they have probably more tentative to grow even to more, that if just from that concern. But I do want to comment is we want to be as a governing agency and according to the law, and it will be helpful making the law more clear and specific to guide people for the performance. If you read your performance, I agree that your 4.2 did mention that within the buffer zone and within all the resources as mentioned is within the jurisdiction of this commission, and which is the same as stated in the Wetlands Protection Act. But the Wetlands Protection Act clearly differentiate the resources and the buffer zone. The buffer zone is in the jurisdiction to make sure any alteration in the buffer zone, there's no one-to-one mitigation requirements, but there's a requirement that your activities in the buffer zone shall not causing negative or significant impact to the resources. That's what I understand for most of conservation's bylaw to creating no alteration zone, which is to reserve or preserve mature trees for shading and for runoff control. And I can see that for the 50 feet, that's why in the bylaw, at least I'm reading at it. So if you apply and observe that requirement, that's pretty much achieved it. It's almost like to some degree, of course, if you deem the 100-foot is fully that important, you should change your bylaw to 100-foot, no disturb zone, right? Because then that's you have no argument. There's no personal opinions to it. I'm not saying, but at this point, I'm understanding is if 50-foot, if we meet that, it's almost like a 100-foot riverfront. If the first 100-foot you cannot touch, and second is 10%. If 10%, you're less than 10% under the old one or 5,000 or 10%, you meet that performance. That's at least very clear in the Wetlands Protection Act. But in your bylaw, I cannot find that performance specific details. People can meet that. Right out. If you don't, that means you are regulating by person rather than by law. So if that's just my observation, there's no emotional or personal.
Can I interrupt you for a second and tell
Yes.
you that I understand where you're going with this, but I agree with you. We have specific performance standards for the 50-foot no alteration zone, and we do not have similar performance standards for the outer buffer zone, but we do have the section 3, which is burden of proof, which says that you have to demonstrate with a preponderance of credible evidence that what you are proposing to do in any part of the buffer zone is not going to have significant adverse impacts. And demonstrating it does not just mean, you have to talk specifics. You have to say, if I take down all these trees and mitigate with these trees, there will be no net loss of shade. And you have to get, point by point to the values of what the buffer zone provides to the resource area. And I don't believe you've done that, at least not in writing. And the other thing I want to say is that the commission does have a certain amount of discretionary authority, and that does enable us to look at each project individually and not treat everything exactly in black and white and exactly the same. So you have to keep that in mind too. If anybody else on the commission has another comment, let's do that. But if not, I feel like it's time to move to continue this.
I have a comment then.
Nobody else besides Michael?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
that with what Jean said, I agree with that. And the fact that, to your point, to Shang about, yes, there's a no alteration zone, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to show how just that issue of what Jean talked about, and it was a comment in my comments to you that you didn't respond to, was the idea of showing how the mitigation balances, and that it is providing that evidence that it's not an impact. That was one of the, it was a very small comment, but that was one that you chose not to answer, but you answered it, you partly answered that in a previous question, but you sort of partly addressed it. But yes, we do have, even though there's the no alteration zone, we do have, there's the issue then of showing some balance of how the, of what you're doing in the outer zone is something that you've reduced the number of area, and you've shown that there's mitigation that balances what you are going to be taking in the outer buffer zone. And hopefully there are ways, as I said, to reduce that impact without that still makes it a reasonable project and for the owner. And right, I guess I won't repeat myself, that I think you could do more on the combination of the mitigation and reduction. In this project, avoidance and reduction are basically the same. But I'll leave it at that there.
Right. So yeah, just for the same, the proof of no significant impact. If so, since we are lacking of specific what items we need to show, I would assume will be to the interest of the wetlands protection at 9, 8, and 9 interest impact perspective. If you, so otherwise, if you don't have a specific say to prove what, right? That's what I'm puzzled when I'm reading your regulation. If you don't have that, I feel I already did, because we recharged all the runoff from the impervious perspective, and we were walking on the side. We see there's plenty mature trees to shade the wetlands, which will not be reduced. Or will be not significant impact, and for erosion, and we'll have erosion control, and it will be fully vegetated before we remove the erosion control. And we are not increasing runoff due to the mitigation we put in for the dry well and for the exfiltration trench, even though under the performance standard, we don't even need to do it, and we did it. Right, so I just cannot see anything else, and we added more berry carrying shrubs, improving the wildlife habitat, which I believe is a significant value adding to this site. As you all see, if anybody presented the site saw that, which we don't have much there. We added 22. It's for a single family house, and you can see around the whole edge of it. Of that disturbance. I have no problem to taking that out, but not to making as a lawn. So I mean, my client is at here, and I just want to quickly address Cindy's comments to be creative at this point. I know if they don't know what area they can do it, and right now it's just wasting people's money to creating any kind of house shape to fit in somewhere we don't even know. So you can say a totally outside of the buffer zone. That's if that's the case, we don't even need to comment on it. We can shape whatever it is. But I mean, it's less than 1/3 of it into it, and I feel as you can condition it, so we can comment back when we have a house. And the only thing I try to be a little bit flexible. If you are the homeowner, you want to know it and to design, and we clearly show that we will do a smaller house, but we just want this flexibility, have a box that the architect can design creatively. Then we're coming back to you and to show you as a like a very minor amendment. At this point, since the limit of work, given that even we pull back, this
Shane.
is still quite a distance.
Just Shane, like, can I just interrupt for a sec?
Yes.
I know Jean has not had a chance to review the new materials thoroughly. I have not had a chance to review the new materials thoroughly. There's been extensive discussion here, and I know that, you know, commissioners that have had some time have provided some information, and I don't think at this point we're not going to get through all of this tonight. It is almost 11 o'clock. So I want to put a motion on the table to continue this hearing.
Second.
Well, I need a date and time from Elizabeth. And then we can have a discussion.
March 3rd at 9:30.
Now you can say second.
Second.
Thank you, Carol.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move to discussion. Michael, I see you've had your hand up.
Yeah, no, I guess I'll just say to Shang, you've heard just my comments. I'm only one person that you could possibly reflect between now and then, but you can choose not to since I'm just one commissioner. I'll leave it at that.
Well, he's heard other comments as well, so.
Yeah, right. At least for my comments, sorry.
So we have a motion to continue. All those in favor, Jean, aye. Michael,
Hi.
Cindy,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
and Neil has left the meeting. All right. We'll see you next time, DeShang.
Yeah, thank you. If it's possible, I at least would like to request even a policy about, you know, proof of evidence that not negatively impact your resources. And it sounds like I'm hearing comments a little bit confused that we are seems like in exercising the regulation to enforce no negative impact. I'm kind of on the buffer zone, but maybe it's related. I'm not saying totally irrelevant, but it's still quite different as the resources and the buffer zone. So I hope down the road, and the commission can consider as representing the residents in town to making that part a little bit clear. So then I understand discretion, because if we relying on both side discretion, my discretion, interpretation, your discretion, it's going to be not productive.
Shane, you've made your point, and we have to move on.
Okay.
And it's an agreed upon reasonable point.
Yes.
Okay, I would do one round, and just the Mike's provided some very specific comments that I can easily understand and consider, and that's what I will promise. And then I'm going to coming up performance analysis as according to the rough guidance in your regulation, and to my best I can. And hopefully we can submit a little bit earlier, so we don't really have that much time. I try to, because I get to understand and creating some more specific writings. So that's not easy. Just like you have to write in something like in for. Okay, no, I think yeah, you guys understand my dilemma and difficulty to do my work, and it's not I don't want to do it. You can see I mean try my best at this as you can see here. So on what we have shown you. Okay, so I will get something over to you, and hopefully get another round of the reduction. And as far as Carol, I know you commented on the number of trees and or reduction, or I will try my best to explain it. So hopefully we can get at this agree to some kind of tentative. That's a
right.
little bit harder.
Thank you, DeShang.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Good night.
All right. Do we have anything else that we need to cover tonight?
Did we actually vote?
We did not. Yes, we did.
We did.
Oh, we did?
We
Oh,
did.
okay.
Yep.
Couldn't even remember now. It's so late.
No, it didn't vote. I think
Did the roll call.
Yeah.
With the roll call vote, we did it?
Yes,
No,
we
you
did it.
didn't vote each person, right? I don't think Mike says yes.
We
or
did
no.
it.
I
We
don't-
did the vote.
We
Okay.
did the
really?
vote to
We did the
Yeah.
vote.
do it.
You
Anna,
called
there's
every
nothing
person?
left to talk about,
There's
right?
nothing left.
Okay, I have a motion to
Adjourn.
adjourn. Anyone? Anyone?
Second.
Thank you.
Lots of fast seconds on that one.
Michael, I.
It was in harmony. All those in favor, Jean, I, Carol,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Courtney,
Oh, I see. I answered for Cindy. Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
Motion passes. Good night, everybody.
Good night.